Alrighty, there we go. Weirdness going on. Everyone's well.
Your repurposed freighter drifts through space. As you stare out at the star-flecked void, another ship comes in. Wait, is this sci-fi? I thought we agreed on a World War II campaign. Oh, did we? That's cool. I can pivot. The smell of smoke curdles in your nostrils. Hold up, I thought we were prepping for a zombie apocalypse campaign. Alright, here's what we're doing. It's the year 3700. Humanity's elite fled to other planets long ago, taking with them all forms of advanced technology. Earth survivors scrape by with historic tools as weird phenomena plague abandoned nuclear sites. Witnesses report seeing glowing lights and the dead rising from their graves. And amidst the chaos, three strangers will meet in a dim bar. A veteran zombie slayer, a disgraced general out for revenge, and a space mercenary sent to investigate the power plants. Now describe your characters. How did you do that?
And a double troller giveaway.
I have the right tools for the job.
As well. Good. Hey, everyone. Hopefully, has had a good Father's Day if you celebrate it. Exclamation point drawing for the Troll Lord. 2 25-hour gift certificates tonight.
A story once spoken is ageless. The dungeon imagined without end. The curious are the ones most courageous.
Much going on.
The tree that endures has to bend. From stillness, the mad mage is stirring. From countless voices,
both are coming on, and in it. We're good.
Zagig will test the enduring. Those unlucky will never escape.
Hello there!
Good to see you, Ed.
Yeah, good to see you guys too. It's so nice.
Yeah. Been a little while. I know you've been busy. Hollywood and stuff. Yeah.
No, I've been busy having COVID.
Oh, no way. Are you serious?
Yeah. Which I think I caught at GaryCon. It's just I had no energy. Sort. You know that.
More like the long COVID that you get sometimes too.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's okay. So I'm behind on everything because I would go and sit at the keyboard and just sit there, getting more and more tired, and I type a sentence. And then
what do you call it when you don't have COVID and you still have that syndrome?
Yeah. Well, no, that's called being in government.
Gotcha.
But yeah. Other than that, yes, I've been churning out stuff. I cleaned up my computer because it's Windows 11, so it can't handle anything beyond 3rd grade without overloading its memory, because everything takes such great gobs of memory. So I cleaned up the desktop and compiled files into little folders and, cleaned it up. And yeah, I've gotten through about 14, 15 projects since Marathon. Yeah. That doesn't mean my desk is empty. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It just means I can see the desk now. That's all. Anyway, hi. I'm happy to see you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My son saved me $1,500 this morning.
What?
So
Okay.
he's just finished as a sophomore in high school, and he has his A+ certification in hardware and software now. And I come upstairs, my laptop just isn't turning on. I'm like, what the hell?
Right.
But the mouse is glowing like it's on.
Right.
So he's like, well, if you had a BIOS update, and sometimes these things get locked, I'm gonna open it up. I'm gonna unplug the battery. I'm gonna drain the battery. And I'm gonna reboot it. And it boom, back up. I was like, oh my god, dude, you know how much is it? Nice to have someone smarter than you with something here. So it's
but you see, Jay, this is modern thinking. Post-war thinking is redundancy. You should have 4 computers set up. One doesn't start. You just go to the one next door. You unplug your external huge 50 terabyte backup drive and move it to the next computer. And you keep no work on the computers. They're all on the terabyte backup drive.
And then you hope that he self-heal in a couple of weeks and you start again by itself. Yep.
Yeah.
And when I'm live here, do you know how many computers I have on right now? It was sitting where I am.
5,
No,
6?
3.
Oh, okay, 3. Okay, that's pretty good then.
I got 3 live here, but yeah, I got the laptop because it's right here, and I got I put the Twitch on there and the giveaways and Discord and all, because I don't want, like on this machine, I don't want to it's a great machine, but I want to keep as little resources as possible on that. What's up, Amanda? So we got Ed tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's been like 10 shows, so it's been 10 weeks. But no biggie there. So we're gonna have some fun tonight. And unlike everyone else thinks Anna picked this topic, I picked it. So on the climate one, this is deep stuff. So but we'll have some fun.
I got a lot of talking to do on this one.
Yeah. Amanda, you just finished your dad's special first D&D session. That's awesome. That's cool. That is super, super cool. Great to hear. But so we got a lot going on the next couple weeks. 5 streams this upcoming week, including a doubleheader on Saturday, Thursday night game, Wednesday, and then so there's the 24. I got to talk to Ed to see if last year he participated in the end of the 24-hour stream. That 24-hour stream is coming up again.
Oh yeah. I've got that on my
July
schedule.
11th. Yes.
Yes.
So all right, I'll add you to that banner. If you late night, whenever you can get on 6:00 p.m. Eastern or whatever, boom.
That's not late night. Late night is 4 a.m., buddy.
It's late night. Whenever you get out, because I'm assuming you're working and going right from work.
I am working, so I'll have to drive home at top speed, outrunning the cops.
Get home whenever.
Tear off my fishnets in the car and my stiletto heels.
That's
Leave
awesome
the
to hear.
pole.
It got Jared's dad into the mix. That is really cool, Amanda. And things are going great. By the way, Tiffany would be on if she wasn't in Florida. So yeah.
How dare she?
I know.
Florida, it's where old Canadians go to die. Tiffany should not go there.
This time last week, I had already taken her to the Philly airport after CMYCon, and she got stuck there, and I had to go pick her up at 1:00 in the morning.
Jeez.
Stayed here until the next day. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Andy. Yeah. Oh my God, what a nightmare it was. But it was cool. The weather was awful here. All right, so lots of stuff going on. Just let me do a couple quickie announcements for those that are on now, and then we'll just you saw the 24-hour stream in a couple 3 weeks, and 3 weeks that is. But our newest sponsor is really excited. They're coming on in 2 weeks. And Ed, do you know anything about Arduin at all, Ed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we got George and Dave. Whoops. Oh, of course.
Press the right button.
I did. It's just the desktop thing always resets back to default on the first one. There we go.
Oh,
so we got George and David from Emperor's Choice. Arduin, Bloody Arduin, and we've already been doing giveaways. They're sponsoring both my channel and Tiffany's channel. So there you go. And there's a picture from us at CMY, but they're going to be on in 2 Sundays to talk about everything that's going on, history and all that stuff, just so you're aware. So great company. Let me see if I got the, damn, I got too many freaking shout outs. There's their shout out. So boom. All right. Just letting you know on that, and we'll have a normal Gabbin next week. Oh, there's a reason I had that up too. All right. Awesome. So climate. I'm going to say what everyone says. Icewind Dale's cold. That's all the climate I know. And freaking Forgotten Realms said, it's really cold there. That's it. I don't know anything else. So I want to hear some stuff.
Okay.
And also that Visions, Paul Luby has a great climate on Greyhawk 1. We may reference it. So yeah. But like, how did your climate theories come about when you were creating Forgotten Realms? Like,
well,
north is cold,
yeah,
south is warm. I mean, just like were you thinking like, oh man, these, because I know Anna goes, well, look, the drift, you got the,
And Minnie, when you did it, did you have like a planet in mind, or Minnie Greyhawk it's kind of clearly done as a planet with like Earth as a reference and then taken from there. There was even the dragon articles and stuff like that depict the circumference and so on and so forth, and they talk about various things like seasons and so on and so forth. Did you have that in mind, or was Forgotten Realms more kind of freely created, so to speak, or
both? Like, I know that sounds contradictory, but I was doing I want this world to be big.
Yeah.
So unless it has no core at all, or a gas giant core, it's going to have heavier gravity, and it's going to be a little larger. And you saw that in the original Realms box set when Jeff and Karen shoved in an outline of the United States of America,
right,
and did the thing to show that it's slightly bigger. But as a like 5 and 6 year old, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about what I wanted.
Yeah.
As because the early Conan stories, like the Tower of the Elephant and so on, I don't mean the really early ones where he's a barbarian breaking out of Samaria and fighting the Frost Giant's daughter and so on in the snow, with the Frazetta illustrations where everybody's up to their knees in snow while they fight. I was thinking him as the thief in this sort of hot Mediterranean to warmer. Okay, so I thought, oh yeah, there's going to be some bombing.
When you live in Canada or Scandinavia, you want warm fantasy.
You want warm,
not cold ones. So yeah.
But I was also Fafhrd and Grey Mouser. And they were like when they're in Lankmar and so on, it is sort of vaguely warm enough for everything.
Yeah.
And Fafhrd in particular, because in the first the Cold Shoulder stuff, he comes from the north where his mother and the other woman of the village are literally the snow witches.
Yeah.
They can kill people with weather.
Yeah. Yeah, and fantasy tends to go into these kind of iconic biomes, meaning you have the north, the steamy hot jungles, the dry hot desert, etc. So which suits fantasy really well, so to speak. So you don't have to go into detail. I guess the problem comes in some areas how you go from one to the other, so to speak.
Yeah, the transition.
The in-between transition that gets forgotten in
and
fantasy
that was
types.
The problem when you saw Galarian for the first time from Paizo. Because this land is, an Egypt. This land is a, analog of this, and they're touching each other.
Yeah,
and
that's what I have to
what
spend.
The heck?
Yeah, that's what I have to spend 90% of my effort when I do setting maps to puzzle these iconic biomes together and do the transitions.
What's the transition zone? Now the other thing that was affecting me as a 5-year-old, because my dad was a radar physicist. And
there you go.
And he was working on, his doctorate was radio source in Cygnus X1, out in the galaxies. But he was working for various defense stuff before they all shut down. Like Diefenbaker said, no nukes in Canada, so Canadian arsenals shut down. And there was Ferranti Packard, and then there was Canadian General Electric, and then he was a prof at a university. But because of that, he was showing me radar scope, bad weather, how it shows up. And we were talking about climate. And of course, I was getting climate in my public school at that time because we happened to have teachers who were had been urban planners for small towns in Ontario that sort of grew. And when they sort of grew, they have weird street layouts, because it's the original survey that the British surveyors did in the trackless forest to give land to farmers. And then everybody cleared and did their farms. And then it's wherever their cart tracks went. And some of them had these weird, and I mean, there are places in Ontario you can go to in that are now cities that have weird 5-way intersections because of that. And I've seen them in Europe too, but there's more of an excuse there because they're older. You're stuck with something that grew together. And because of all that, he was explaining to me about prevailing winds, orographic rainfall, where you would want to put. And so I was getting all that as a young kid, and then I was getting it from all these profs, these teachers. And then because I was happening to grow up in the 60s rather, the time of land and money, they would throw us into a school bus and take us to some small town or corners north of the city and say, see, I was telling you about how a river does oxbows. Here it is.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Yep. And so, I also think that it's different if you grow up in temperate areas where seasons are really defined. Mean, if I grew up in Southern California, seasons would have been more of an abstract concept, so to speak, when there differs much less from one part of the year to another.
Sure. And also, I had lots of contact with rural people. Grandparents and that generation had come from farms and made it in the city.
But they still had that farmer's mentality where you have to really understand. That's why we started to track time in the world back in ancient history, was to know when to plant and when to harvest and all that. Yeah.
But I mean, whenever anybody died and we went back to the village for the funeral or somebody got married, you ended up as a young kid, in your ill-fitting good suit. The United Church woman would want you to help them set all the tables in the church and then get out. They didn't want you underfoot while they were finishing the food and then bringing it out. So you said, go talk to the men. And the men were all out back smoking because they'd already been shooed out of so you stood there and listened because these were older men and they were talking about important things. Well, they were all farmers. So they were talking about
how crappy the weather was.
But you got this sense of how weather was changing.
Yep.
We were getting milder every year. And they were talking about the old days. And the old days was things like, if you wanted a big bag of flour and you were in this small town called Strathroy, you left the farm and you walked to London. And you came home with a 50-pound sack of flour on your back in a trackless blizzard, making sure you didn't get lost by following the roads. And the farm wife was out there with the dogs and with a loaded gun because there were bears and wolves been talked about, and she wanted her husband to make it home. I just like, wow. But of course now they'd say, oh, we don't get winters like that anymore. So you were aware of how things were changing over the years.
Yep.
Anyway, I could talk for hours about this.
That's good. No, this is great, man. That's just I knew this was a topic we have never touched, so I was thinking we could really delve into it and get some. Quick question: is this map sufficient for discussing specifics of the realms? I just want to make sure. Is this one okay?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
All
right.
Because I'm gonna zig when you thought I was gonna zag.
Okay. Just want to make sure. I had one at least. I have the Moonshays too and stuff and other things.
Why don't I start by doing a zip over thing that's applicable to all fantasy settings?
Sure.
and then I'll get straight into embarrassing Anna. Okay.
Awesome.
Oh,
No,
awesome.
in a good way. In a good
Okay.
way. Okay, so let me say we're talking about the role of climate in a game world that works sorta like ours. Meaning you can hand wave anything with magic, but we're going to assume that we're not. We're going to assume that magic works in the game, but you recognize the climate and the situations like our own world. So if there's earth motes floating in the sky, they're not affecting climate too much, if you see what I mean.
Yep.
You're still recognizing the weather and the weather patterns and the fact that we have summer and winter. And if you're lucky, spring and fall. If you're lucky, it doesn't leap from I'm too cold to, oh my God, the air conditioning doesn't work. We're going to die.
That's inland climate, so to speak, that when you're away from the ocean, you get that. Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. So because we're talking about this, the climate has some obvious effects. Where people can live, what people wear, their architecture, and their agriculture or livestock.
Yep.
What can be grown or grazed, and how much of it will the local climate support? You're not going to have huge civilizations in the desert because there's nothing to drink and nothing to eat. So this in turn determines where population is going to be high, meaning where living creatures have enough to eat and drink, and in turn where the wealth will be, because the wealth is either where minerals are concentrated or where all the people are concentrated because they've glommed onto the stuff. Then there's a secondary set of climate effects. This is the stuff that, my teachers talked about. And if you didn't get those teachers, you might not even think about things until they hit you between the eyes, like a flood or tsunami or whatever. The climate affects trade routes, and it affects the fastest, easiest mass movement across the landscape by barge down rivers, for instance. It also determines the lengths of growing seasons for agriculture and when do northern ports ice up and for how long, so the length of the seasons. Climate also dictates local severities, what seas, whirlpools, onshore storms, undertows, and riptides, and tsunamis, tidal waves, and all that fun stuff, or deserts, sandstorms, lack of water for too great distances, are hostile or inhospitable no-go areas in your world. Which brings us to a tertiary set of effects. A game that has magic that can affect microclimates, and if you're playing D&D, that's just about all druid spells, folks.
Yeah.
And the cumulative effect of spells being cast that affect the weather. For example, magic worked in a monastery where the monks and clerics create optimal growing conditions so they can eat, so they can grow herbs and medicines such as a poison garden. There are real poison gardens you can go and visit as a tourist in the real world, by the way, folks. They can arrange greenhouse and hothouse growing conditions, and they can generate bulk crops to fill granaries. How does their stationary but frequent magical meddling affect wider weather patterns? And on that Forgotten Realms map, you will notice there are a lot of cities along there along the Sword Coast, including one that we know rather well called Waterdeep.
Yeah.
Well, there is a granary monastery just to the east of it inland called Golden Fields. And one of the things and in Golden Fields, clerics of Shanti, etc., grow tons of crops for the adjacent markets. But all of this stuff that I've been warbling about are all matters a world builder has to think about. And to see a master world builder at work, take a look at your screen. Or take a look at https://www.annabmeyer.com/2021/05/03 Earth Part 2 Climate on the internet, or just do a Google search for Earth.
Yeah, I put you just scroll up in chat. I put a link to my climate map, so I can put the link in again here. So there you go. There's the link again.
Excellent.
That's the latest version of my climate study of
All right, let me.
Because Anna has done all the work for you. She looks at Greyhawk lore and the maps we know, and she applies real world elements like orographic rainfall we talked about and prevailing winds and currents. Think of the effects of our real world Gulf Stream to reach logical conclusions for specific locales. She works it all out in front of your eyeballs. So if you don't want to become a master climate thing, Anna has done it for you.
And thank you, Ed. But there's one other aspect that I think also is important in fantasy stories, in that climate affects, and especially climate changes affects history. That they can lead to people migrate, they lead to change in power levels and so on. Meaning a drought can wipe out the harvest in some areas, and that can shrink the meaning that happened in the real world, that climate effects and
Babylon.
Exactly. And in the fantasy world you can definitely have that. And I think in Greyhawk the twin cataclysm might be magically induced, but a lot of the fallout from them were related to climate effects, I think, that came from that the twin cataclysms, so to speak.
And if you ever want to be depressed and you have enough money to fly to the Middle East, if you go to the Dead Sea, it's surrounded by luxury resorts from the 50s and 60s that are abandoned. Ghost town
because
ruins.
they're like 2 miles away from the
They're
Dead
now
Sea.
2 miles away from the Dead Sea. Yeah.
Go to the Salton Sea near Anna and take a look at that.
That's true. Yeah, that one
that's
too.
The same type of phenomenon.
Yeah. And in fact, that happened a lot more recently in that
Yeah.
I can recall resorts there that actors who are still big in Hollywood went and partied at, and now nobody's going to.
No, now it's a dust bowl full of poisonous, salty, yucky, whatever. So,
So, okay, let's assume for the moment that you're not Anna, and you don't give a, well, maybe you do care about climate, but you're busy. You just want to run a D&D adventure and have the landscape be the stage and the backdrop and nothing more. Well, even if you do that, you still want to drill down and look at close up purely local things like old Black Bart's mill will be right here on this river because it's a grist mill, and Black Bart needs the running river to turn his wheels and power those grindstones.
And he needs farmers that can actually produce the material that he can use in the mill, so to speak. There needs to be something to mill, and so it's a combination of those two.
And by the way, if you're for those of you who don't really get medieval clothes making and so on, you may have heard about, getting in the big tub of urine and stamping on it to make the leather supple. By the way, if you want those sexy boots that come up to your thighs, in the old days, some poor barefoot person trod the human urine for quite a while to make that. But
and it's funny because I posted in my latest post that I will talk about at the end when we announcement that I present my new generation of maps. I have a small town that is a sample map. They actually have just outside the city walls. They have a pond where the tanners and all that uses, and that is downstream. So the drainage from that goes downstream. So they don't have to use that in the water that is the city. So that becomes the problem for the town 5 miles downstream instead. So I thought about stuff like that when I kind of designed the town. And it's an agricultural hub, which means that leatherworking, wool industry and stuff like that is part of it, because those are byproducts of the industry, the agricultural produce in the area around, so to speak. The leather industry is, if you have a lot of cattle and goats and sheep, wool and leather becomes like an add-on industry, and that needs to be catered for as well, so to speak.
Sure, yeah, and again, rivers. We don't just have grist mills and sawmills, which are the two that leap to mind to most Americans because they're featured in their history stories. Like even if you don't take history, but you just get them in Bible school and so on, it's usually the sawmill or the grist mill. Well, there's also stamping mills, and that's how you took care of the fibers for the wool and so on, the flax and so on. And these big hammers, and if you want to see that, you can look on the internet, or if you're lucky, they have it on your television. The people in France who are building a modern castle Gedalon Castle, and
Yep.
their stamping mill and everything else, and that determines in part where the castle will be. Anyway, so yeah, there's that. Now, up here in Canada, I've paid attention to politics for only the last 60 years or so. And at least 3 times, I've heard politicians rebuked by voters when politicians say things like, well, the environment has to take a back seat to jobs and finances. And the voters remind that politico that the environment is jobs and finances, dummy. The environment is everything.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, that applies to every country. I deliberately chose mine so
it's
that,
more like the which horizon you have. If you think in quarters, then fine, you can do whatever you want. If you think in decades or long term and generations, then that is all that builds the economy. That's a foundation of the country's existence.
Yeah, and so as a gamer, as a DM, as a world builder, you don't have to work out the bedrock here and the soil content there.
And it does.
Yeah. But even if you don't, if the world's going to seem logical to most players, the effects of climate are always there, at least in the background.
Yeah, but this also depends on your playstyle. If you run individual cool modules, whatever, you don't need to worry about this. But if you want to run a exploratory big sandbox or campaign over long term, and you want consistency and logic happenings over large areas, and you want to have kingdoms and baronies and stuff, that's when you need to start thinking about these things a bit.
Yeah, and even if everything is all nice and sunny all the time, and it only turns into nighttime when you need it to for plot purposes, and everything is sort of like, the high school stage that you all watch plays on, because you want your gaming to be that way. The nature that's in the background can move to the foreground with shocking suddenness when nature or weather spells at work turns things violent. Like, cyclones, tidal waves, sinkhole collapses, so the whole castle just falls into a hole and everybody in it.
I just did sinkholes, Ed.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
and Murlocs
and hurricanes.
And they came out from the lake.
And I have actually been in a D&D game where we had to hastily grab all our dice and papers as a twister came into view across the farm fields. We were in Kansas, in Tornado Alley, and it was coming towards us. Where we're going, hey, I think
Did you make your saves?
Oh yeah, we just drove away.
Okay, good. Yep.
Yeah. I've driven through a hurricane. I can tell you about that some other time because we'll be here all night. So anyway, because climate isn't just part of the bones of the setting, it can also be used to form the bones of ongoing adventures. So I whipped up 2 examples, one for Greyhawk and one for the Realms. Beginnings, not big finished chunks of lore, because these are far more useful as puzzle pieces to use in your own campaign by altering them a bit here and there so they can easily be plugged in. So that's what I've brought to the table tonight. But I'll shut up now because
that's good. No, I like that. I like that because Anna's done all the really hard work.
Yeah.
So
she has.
Do that.
There is also, I want to add another little aspect. You can have microclimates is one thing that can affect a lot of things. And now when I worked on the Veng area, Critwall, Shieldlands, Western Shieldlands. So then I was looking into what do these areas look like in detail, and I realized that Veng is one of the biggest. It's like a huge river. It's like Mississippi or the Volga or just about a bit less than the Amazon, but it's a huge river that comes from the north going south. It will bring a lot of cold with it and a lot of humidity, and otherwise,
like Colorado
exactly.
Cold flowing.
Yep. So it's a lot of, and it's bigger than the Colorado, but it's definitely in that scale, so to speak. So it brings a lot of local weather, and both for Riundi and the Shieldlands are more than 1,000 miles away from the ocean. So they are kind of fairly on the dry side, so to speak. So I would assume that along the Veng, in that Veng Valley, you will have a much more humid, misty microclimate. So that's why you probably have a lot of more agriculture for two reasons. Floodplains naturally are fertilized, so they are very good that way. And there's more rainfall, more mist and stuff. So those hills and are much more forested along the river a few miles in than if you go 20, 30, 50 miles away from the Veng, so to speak. So you will have a local, that's why and I put that in even on my first Greyhawk map. I thought about it because I made a lot more forest and stuff along that river for that reason, even 30 years ago when I started studying stuff. Now I can dig into it in detail and it's fun. So I mentioned that microclimate in my post today. So yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
See, folks, this is how it's done.
No, but it's one of these things that many things like that you can add cool local flavor when you world build and you set up your barony or your kingdom or whatever, so to speak.
Let's go. I'm going to do this. I'm going to throw a wrench. Let's go to the most inexplicable climate in all of Greyhawk in our playing area.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
I guess it starts with a B. Yeah, there you go.
Bright Desert doesn't make any sense, right?
It makes kind of a little bit. It's not that terrible. I put it. It's one climate zone away from what it's supposed to be, or one climate zone heat-wise. It's one climate zone warmer, and now we're talking Köppen. We can explain Köppen a little bit after this, but so it's one zone because the surrounding area would roughly be Mediterranean climate, meaning like what you have on the Southern California coast or California coast, or you will have in southeast of the United States towards like north of like Atlanta coast, South Carolina coast. You will have in Spain, Italy, Greece, and stuff like that. So and so Bright Desert is one climate zone warmer and one climate zone drier because climate basically is made up of two components, that the amount of the temperature and the humidity and the combination of those two. You can have dry cold and you can have dry humid and you can have dry humid of warm cold or super cold or really hot area, so to speak. And so
as a world builder, I can take care of one of those two factors.
Yeah.
Why is the Bright Desert hotter? Because magma, that's lava to you and me, once it gets out into the open, is very near the surface.
Yep.
So you have a hot zone. It's You don't have to have volcanoes. You don't have to have vents.
It's like what's in the oh my god, where all the geysers
you can have Iceland and stuff.
No, in the U.S. and Wyoming.
Oh yeah.
Yellowstone.
It's like Yellowstone. Yeah. Except there's no water there to have all the geysers. Yeah, I got it. Okay, that makes kind of sense.
So we simply have to push it in both humidity and heat one step, so to speak. So if you look at it, you have orange there. That's warm step. That's warm steps.
In the river. That's the river here too.
Oh, exactly. And the river exactly. And the river introduced more humidity. So instead of having a hot desert, you have hot prairie or hot steppes, meaning they are one step more humid than desert. And then you have Mediterranean that is one step more humid and one step colder than the hot desert and the hot steppes.
Let me bring it. All right. I'm just going to bring up.
And so a little bit of magic and a little bit of nature, and you can kind of explain it and you can massage it together a bit. So
here's the Nesser.
Yeah.
Right. Duntide and the Nesser.
Yeah.
Both running. Yeah.
And that is an interesting because that's like in the real world, you have to probably look for South America for something similar. The Paranal in South America is very similar to what the Nat Marsh would be. And you have two huge rivers that are flowing together and funnel their way out, so to speak. So it's very, very similar in the only thing is that this is at a little bit colder latitudes. It's in the Mediterranean or temperate area rather than in the tropics. But when it comes to geography, it's very similar. You have two huge rivers that flow together and create that mishmash of, and depending on the seasons and stuff like that. So you have enormous, like more than 1,000 square miles of flooded area. So there's definitely precedent. There's several areas in the world, but the Paranal, I think, is the best because there you have two rivers, just like here, that flow together.
So I just wanted to show this because I was like curious, like, wouldn't there be pockets of vegetation somewhere
Well,
along the coast?
there would definitely be, but you have to
Right.
realize that each pixel here is almost a
Right.
mile.
So there could be
Yeah,
there could be
so
all right,
you
I got it. I
so
got it.
you
Okay.
don't you have to go closer to
Yeah.
that, and they will exist in, and depending on
Your new map.
even in deserts there is often more vegetation high up.
Yeah.
Because one of the phenomena that happens when you get weather in the desert, it's often hot and dry enough so rain doesn't hit the ground, but you get misty mornings and evenings and
Okay.
nights and stuff. So there's a lot of vegetation up in the hills of deserts that can take the moisture out of thin air, so to speak.
Right.
And the moisture is much more prevalent up where there's some clouds, and especially along the coast. So there might definitely be a lot of shrubby tree hills and stuff along the coast, and also on the Nat Marsh side. So those hills is a thing. So that might seep over, so to speak, climate, because Nat Marsh, depending on the season, might create different. So the bright desert might bloom for a week or two every year and then dry out and stuff like that. Yeah.
Now, speaking of mist in the air, that's how redwoods grow, right? They suck all the mist in the air.
That's a big part of it because they are so tall that it's easier to take the moisture from the air rather than holding it up.
Yep. Where in Flannis and in Faerun does that happen?
There's two candidates climate-wise. Ratik on the east coast have a very similar climate. They have warm ocean currents that come up.
Along here, up here.
Yeah, they're warm ocean currents that come up the Solnor and you create the moisture.
Where
so
the
that
larger trees, the ips or whatever they're called.
Exactly, and a little bit further southeast too. You have the sea barrens and along the coast there. But
so all here, got it.
Exactly. There you have one area that have very similar. That they have that oceanic, like cold rainforest, because that's or temperate rainforest, because that's what the redwoods like. And then you have the similar phenomena on the west coast of the Flannies. If you go to the Udgru, Ekbir and Udgru forest, up there in the north, you have another little, just like Oregon and stuff like that.
I'm going to talk about that later.
Yeah. So that,
awesome.
So those two are I think the best candidates to find these redwoods growing, so to speak, in that. And you see, I haven't drawn it all the way out to the exactly. I haven't drawn it all the way out to the coast because it's usually up when it's the slopes higher up that you get up
and
a couple of thousand feet. That's when you get that misty kind of.
Well, we're going to find out, Kai, if it's a redwood or a larger tree forest in Forgotten Realms, hopefully right now.
So in the realms, redwoods.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, here's the problem. The bit that's real redwoods is off this map.
Okay.
You have to go down and around Chult.
Okay.
Like to the south. So keep going south.
That's as far south as I can go.
Oh, that's the far south. Okay.
Right, hold on.
So below Tethir and the Valen Peninsula sticks out.
Let me see what this one is. Does this one have it?
Yep. Okay. Almost. It doesn't go far east enough. See where it says Faerun in the bottom right corner?
Yeah. All right, got it.
Okay. So if you could follow that coast around off the map, it goes around in a curve back towards the N in Faerun. And down there is Ulgarth and the utter east.
Okay.
And you'll see that on the maps of the realms that cover the most space. And that's where real redwoods would be. The place in the heartlands where we're used to, where there's big forest, is the high forest. It's east of Waterdeep. So if we go up to Waterdeep.
Another map here. 1 second here. Second, Ed, I actually did some prep work.
That's okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you go to the high forest.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
There it is. Yeah. And the Unicorn Run, which is the headwaters of the river, you can see it going right in the bottom end. looks like a little mushroom on your map underneath the words the high. Yeah, right there.
Right there.
That's where you get the big old trees and the moss growing on everything, and unicorns. Hence, Unicorn Run.
Yep.
Awesome.
But it's not redwoods because it's that much colder.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think it's fun because in southeast of Ratik you have the loftwood, and I get the sense that lofty for being tall trees. So I think that name is very appropriate. But there is a third place in Greyhawk that can definitely be a candidate for redwood-like giant trees. And that is due to a different effect. The first one is that you get coastal climate that is warm ocean currents coming up, and you get that moisture from the air that creates weather from the ocean. But there is another type of terrain that can create similar weather that can be long inland. And then we, in the real world, we have to look for places like Nepal is a good candidate for it. And some parts, other parts where you have air can travel a long bit over land, but when it hits a mountain range that is tall enough and you have prevailing wind, you get a lot of rainfall and stuff. And that's where you can Vespi is a candidate for that. So that's why I have why the Vespi is there, so to speak, because it's like one of these rain shadow. And that isn't the same reason, but in reverse is that Paraland has not much forest at all because it's in a rain shadow. You have mountains on both sides, so it's like the Himalayan plateau. It's bone dry, so it's almost it's like there is some moisture due to Lake Quag, so it's like cold steppes, meaning you have a little amount of humidity and rainfall all year round, but not much. So it's enough for grass and bushes and shrubs, but not enough
for large trees.
Exactly, for trees and stuff. So so it's the opposite. And the same thing is that you have, since those mountains are so far apart, so you get like on the west coast you get the interaction with the dry mid-ocean and southerly winds, because the Yacht Hills are like the Himalayas. They're so tall that they interrupt the local weathers and all the way up to the jet stream, so to speak. So that way you have local weather on one climate on the east, one similar climate on the west, but for different reason, and then a third climate in the middle of the two mountains. And so that is something I try to, and it's so cool because the Greyhawk, the people that drew up Gary and others, they definitely knew their climate science and so on. So this has a lot of cool building blocks that works really well, and I just try to articulate them a little bit more. And my new generation of maps, I'm taking it down to the local level, so to speak.
Yeah, I know Gary knew about climate.
Yeah.
Because we did a panel years ago at Gen Con.
Yeah.
This is Kenosha. University of Wisconsin Parkside, Kenosha. Yeah. And he talked about line squalls. He didn't use that term because he wasn't using the sailing term, but he meant storms that come one after another in a line.
Yep.
So his adventure is traveling. All the guys in armor and everything, they just hunker down as the rain becomes
It's
blinding.
like you get over the North Atlantic. They start up in the Caribbean and they come one after the other.
One after the other, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he described those, which meant he knew what he was talking about.
Yep.
And of course, in the Midwest, you get the same thing too, because you can see the storm coming from well away.
Yep. And another thing with climate is that planets, they tend to, you have bands, but you look at Jupiter, Saturn, you see they have these bands of different gas, like light and dark bands and red and whatever. And that is due to planets. Naturally, you get the winds to blow when they rotate around, and you have the sun. So you get like westerly winds at certain altitudes or latitudes, and then you have easterly, and it goes back and forth.
Or you get a big hexagon at the top.
Yeah, exactly. But if you go, it's really cool. If you go to Google Earth and look at South America, you can see that in action. Really well, so to speak. So
clippers, better clippers in the winter.
Yeah. So if you go to Google Earth and look at South America from really high up, so to speak, you get and see and follow the Andes, and you can see that if in the northern Andes, in the tropical zone in the north, it's so wet and the ocean is so close that you have forest on both sides of the Andes. And then you go a little bit south of the the equator, then you have easterly winds. So you have a desert on the west side, like in Peru and the northern Chile. You have a dry, bone dry on the western side of the Andes, and you have the Amazon on the eastern Andes, on the eastern slopes. And then when you move further south, all of a sudden in the middle of Chile, there is a shift. So the winds go from, instead of the winds blowing from the east, westerly winds, so to speak, they blow from the west east, and then you got the forest on the, but here is temperate forest because we are so far south. So you get temperate forest on the west side of the Andes, and you have dry steppes, almost desert on the east.
There's places in Peru that haven't rained in 2,000 years, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's just like,
and
so,
that is only like 200 miles away from the ocean. So these can be profound, and that is the combination of really tall Andes that blocks out the weather almost completely, so to speak. So, and you can see there's a few hundred miles when that shift from one to the other. And that is what happens. That's what I took into account on the Udgru forest and in the west in Ekbir. The reason that doesn't go further south is the band on the jet stream is at that level, so to speak.
That pulls it northeast. I got it.
And the same thing is that the Vestvi is further south, you have less of that effect, so to speak. It goes a little bit further south, but not by much, so to speak. So you have, and then you have a band in the middle where you have winds that go in the other way, and then further south you have the sus.
Areas of that Vestvi should be like Seattle, where it rains almost every day.
Well, in some ways, yes, but Seattle is more like the Udgru or the Loftwood, so to speak. Yeah, because it's coastal, so you have the street, the cold. There's cold water coming down and stuff.
You get a lot of conifers then.
Or hot water.
Washington, Puget Sound area. Thank you,
Sir. But look at Oregon. Oregon have and Washington State have a temperate rainforest by the coast. By going 300-400 miles inland, and it's not bone dry, but it's steppe lands. So it's not much rainfall at all, so to speak.
Speaking of that, I'm going to show something. As you know, we talked about this recently, Wednesday, that I have changed this area right here on my map, Ed. Okay, you're gonna like this for a series of adventures that appeared in an early dungeon magazine.
Ooh.
Okay, for you. Because I wanted to put this that's in Forgotten Realms in Greyhawk, and that is the Mirror of Dead Men, right?
Okay. Oh yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, how did this come about? Is it magical or is it climate combination?
Okay. I put it in to have a dangerous area that would discourage people who didn't have a darn good reason for making the trip from using that coastal road like a easy highway. Okay.
Got it. From Neverwinter to Waterdeep. Got it.
Yeah. And cool. As a kid, I'm not talking as a kid.
No, it's cool.
And you might remember in the Tolkien Reader paperback years ago, they had some of his poems, and one of them was The Mewlips, which was about bog-dwelling, wet sort of scaly-toed, like Innsmouth and the Innsmouth look from Cthulhu. The sort of swamp dwellers, marsh monsters, swamp demons, that sort of stuff. Okay, so I put them in, and then Eric Boyd did in Dragon a two-parter with adventure with a dragon, and developed the Mirror of Dead Men. And
then they did a 5-adventure series in Dungeon.
Yeah, exactly.
He did the last of the 5, and I planned them all. We talked about it on Wednesday.
Yeah,
I switched Merkel for Nerol. It just was great. So
I
loved it.
You see, he really did his thing. He really brought that to life.
Right.
So, so that's what that was.
So you don't think so? It was because it says all the buildings are sinking, right?
Right.
It says that's getting so. I just wanted to know if it was like North Carolina, it's just coastal erosion, or is it a climate issue, or is it just a magical, what would you assume?
I thought that whole area of land was sinking.
Okay.
And I was also mindful of the fact that Gary and Dave Arneson in the early days were talking about where lizardmen lived.
Right.
And it was all these coastal swamps and marshes that they were supposed to live in. So I thought, I better have one.
Okay.
Yep.
Very cool. I just love the concept. So.
Yep. And Ed, you touched on another topic that I think we should dive into have as a little study, and that is land that sinks or rises up, and different reasons for that. Because that is interesting. There and meaning some coastlines, they disappear, they erode away because it's obvious. Ocean waves pounding, it will simply grind through whatever it is. Even the hardest of granite over millions of years will slowly disappear, so to speak.
The east coast of England.
Yeah, exactly.
All those villages that are gone now.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all chalk.
And then you,
right?
Yeah. And then you have another. There's basically two types of coastline. You have rocks of various hardness, and then you have loose sediments like clay, sand, and mud, and stuff like that. And these things interesting because sometimes seawater and stuff can dump particles over time in areas. And one obvious one is like the river deltas. The rivers bring enormous amount of sediment downriver, and then when it reaches the ocean and so on, it gets dumped there and it builds up over time. And the river has to kind of flow over its own dump of stuff. That's why it creates delta. There you have a typical example.
Sure.
I wanted to make some. And the interesting thing is that as long as the river flows a lot, it takes a lot of that stuff and builds new land over time, and then but it changes course over time. So that's one reason why you have coast being built. But you can also have ocean currents that flows can also bring some of that, but then only in very, very shallow, because then the ocean can act like a river and it can move coastlines in narrow areas, like the English Channel is an example, and others where you bring
Sable Island.
Exactly, meaning that stuff like that can move from along the coast up and down, so to speak, or along, so it moves it along. But then you have more long-term other effects, like when you've had an ice age, the ice presses the land down. So when the ice removed, it bounces back, but it bounces back very slowly. So there you have like northern Canada and Scandinavia and stuff. And it's interesting because Scandinavia, Sweden, and Norway is sinking in the south and rising in the north. Depending on where the ice been. So and that can be significant. It can be like a quarter of an inch per year. So it can be so much that they have to move the harbor or port every decade or so. They have to move it further away.
If you look at English history, they have the warden of the Cinque Ports, meaning the 5 ports. Well, the 5 ports changed. Like they weren't all the same roster. And one of the reasons they changed is some of the ones that had been ports are now inland.
Yep.
The sea doesn't go there anymore.
Yeah. And that could be,
And there's another thing. In the north of Canada, in the Great Lakes, there was a war between Canada and the United States in 1812. It actually lasted from 1812 to 1814, but we call it the War of 1812 because that's when it started. In the middle of that war, a sailing ship was sunk. It's now an island because the silt and sediment built up around the shipwreck and formed an island. It's not a big island.
Because it's like you have a particle, some blockage of a river that will pile up in front of it and creates it. Yep.
And then so we know exactly when that island started, and that's not a long time to build an island.
Yep. And then you have volcanic stuff, meaning
Surtsey.
Exactly. Surtsey outside of Iceland is a perfect example. And look at the Hawaiian Island. You can have a hot spot, and then the crust, depending on how your fantasy world, you might have tectonic plates. I'm starting to think about some fantasy tectonic where you can build elements and stuff. But then you can say if you have there might be a plume of magma rising up in the same spot over many, many millions of years, but the surface, the crust moves along it, and then it punches through every few million years, and you get like exactly east the Hawaiian Island and the Canary Islands are typical examples of these two. And they are also over land. You can get a hot spot that punches through a volcano every few million years, and meaning the Rift Canyon and the White Plume Mountain can be
Yeah.
that type of
I was
effect.
thinking that as you were saying on White Blue Mountain. But
I see that though as kind of magical too, right? Because I
think you can add stuff like that in.
Yeah,
there is in classic fantasy literature a case of magic to do with sinking land.
Mm-hmm.
Fritz Leiber, when writing the Lankmar, Fafhrd and Grey Mouse, there is actually a piece of land in his landscape called the Sinking Land, and it rises and falls on a schedule magically. It goes out of the water, and they go. So there's a land bridge that goes away.
The Isles out in Greyhawk too. Yeah, we have that too.
And you have another natural phenomena that can kind of depict this a bit, because sometimes you get vegetation that grows on top of water.
Yes.
And that can grow and become, and then you have birds that poop on it, and there's more, and it creates its own soil, and there's more vegetation on top of it, etc., etc. And eventually it might be so much that it succumbs to its own weight, and it gets waterlogged and it flows down, and then eventually it might come up again. So they are natural artificial islands. They're usually in lakes and stuff, not in the ocean, because the ocean is usually too violent enough. And but especially in places like Paraná, like Nat Marsh and big, you might find islands in a swamp that actually have no bottom, so to speak.
Yeah, no bottom.
Yeah, and bogs. If you up in like northern Canada, Scandinavia, and other places where you have bogs, they can be scary, eerie, because when you walk out on them, they feel fairly solid, and then you realize the whole thing is just going like this,
moving up and down. And
if you fall through, you're done. Quicksand is nothing from that. It's scary.
Isn't there an island that spins up there in a lake? It's like circular, and it rotates,
moves
around.
like a whirlpool. Very slowly.
I know. I saw pictures of that.
I could definitely think fantasy monsters and stuff that easily dig through peat and stuff like that under and live in that. Exactly.
So real quick, going back to this, which our first order of you'll keep here, Wales Castle on this, and it was not this detail on the Darlene map. I'm like, oh, cool, look at that delta Anna did. Wow. So I went from a square keep, because you had to fill the entire paper, right, back in the day when you were a kid. You had to fill it up to Grand Duchy of Rheims accessory to a knockoff of Mont Saint Michel. Yeah, so you have,
which is another place in the real world that when the tide is out, you can walk to it, and when the tide comes in, you better not try.
Well, I have it kind of that area's title too in the game to make it similar.
Yeah,
I have it, but I'm not sure if that's the case or not. But it doesn't matter.
It probably will be, because the Azure Sea is not big enough. You need a lot of ocean, because you need that wave to come from a large distance. So like the Azure Sea might have a tiny tidal, but not much. Near Deux probably it's too small to have a tidal wave at all, and so you need open ocean.
Well,
and you
wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Exactly. Yeah.
There's a real world. There's a flip side to that. You can have a tidal wave. Lake Erie of the Great Lakes. They're the big 5 Great Lakes.
Whoops.
There's actually more if you count Lake St. Clair and everything, but screw that for a moment. Lake Erie, the one that has Ohio and New York State and stuff to the south of it, is the shallowest of the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Superior is the deepest. Because Erie is so shallow, it's like you take a frying pan in your kitchen and put 2 inches of water in it, and then you start waving the pan around like this. But you can get tidal waves because it's so shallow.
But those tidal waves are not caused by the same. They're caused by weather, pressure difference, and wind. So that means that they are, meaning regular tidal waves, they come every 6 hours or something like that, or 12 hours.
But
the tidal wave, those waves that you get, they can vary. They can vary 10, 20 feet or 10, 15 feet at least. They come from weather. You have pressure difference, and you have, if pressure and wind kind of cooperate, then you can get these huge differences that way locally, and they don't appear out in the ocean because the ocean is too big and deep.
A couple of tens of thousands of years, Lake Erie's going to drain. when the Niagara Falls reaches it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Another
it's
thing
doing
with
that right now. Yeah.
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 And another thing with tides is that
Great.
they're not that you can measure out in the big ocean. They're not that you need a funnel for them, so to speak. That's why you have what is it? There's a bay in eastern Canada that has one of the biggest tides. And
Bay of
then you
Fundy,
have and the
that's
English
very
Channel
Canadian.
and some parts in Western British Isles that have enormous
Scotia?
tides. Yeah.
Bay of Fundy's in Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah.
So and then you have other areas that are not so they needs to funnel the tidal wave goes around what is it east to west or west to east I forgot which but it follows around the earth that way so to speak. So if you have north south facing it might not be that much, but in other areas if you get it the right funnel effect so to speak and the right angle you get enormous tides. So
just like that wall. Remember that scene in the Lord of the Rings movies where Arwen summons magically, and suddenly the water horses are just taking the ring race out. You can have that in real life in the right place at the right time. You can have a wall of water moving up river at the right time.
Yeah. And another effect that comes with tidal effects is that you get huge mud flats when you get the coastline is very kind of bare open in areas like if you go to Britain especially on the western side you can have huge mud flats with low tide, and at high tide you get like a coastline that looks fairly normal, and all of a sudden it's you can have a quarter of a mile of mud and sand.
I can recall a friend who rented a dinghy for like a day. I'm just gonna putter around this little area.
And he got stuck out there.
Well, no, he came back. He wanted lunch, so he went to the pub. So he tied the dinghy up to a bollard.
Yeah.
Went in and ate. Came out, and he said, "Oh, someone stole my boat." And the local guys started to laugh. They said, "No, mate. Look at the bollard. It's still it was hanging like a yo-yo."
Yeah.
Because he didn't know and he tied it too close to the bollard, and then the tide went out, and the water was now 40 feet below where it had been, and his boat was hanging from his rope.
It also works in reverse if you tie it to the mud and then the water comes and
that's cool.
Yeah.
So all right, Ed, I don't know if you did any you said you had something prepared, which kind of I was like, oh, you actually get some lore off of this?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
One for each?
Yeah, one for each, of course.
Okay. Well, we're almost 8. Why don't we do the Forgotten Realms one first? How's that sound?
Yes.
Sure.
All righty. I'll bring up the Forgotten Realms map here. And
I'll do
the lore here, brand new lore.
Okay. Well, I figured you'd go Greyhawk, so I have to go past all the.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Save the Greyhawk for last for all the.
Okay, sure. Okay.
People.
So let me go. Right. So here I am, creator of the Forgotten Realms. So I better have something to say about. Okay. So, the obvious climate-related element in a Realms campaign is the orc hordes. The frequent mass north to south marauding by orcs driven out of their Sword Coast North cavern homes by lack of food, which is caused by climate. The cold, short growing seasons wilderness landscape can only support so much food. To raid south into warmer lands where lots of humans live. So on your map there, you see where all the roads run, and they'd be hitting water deep. They'd hit everything settled. They're coming down these rivers, coming down. And they're coming down here, and they're just wiping out and plundering and eating. And okay, the published realms has mitigated these because they didn't have many of these orc hordes occur, because they had other major realm-shaking events to tell in published adventures. So the hordes in the published realms, the time periods we've covered in novels and so on, have largely not happened. And Bob, R.A. Salvatore, to you guys, put in a mitigating factor. the Orc King character, Obel Many Arrows. So he starts unifying and governing some of the orcs, and that cuts down on the orc hordes. Because what happens in the orc hordes is orcs are fecund. They have too many kids, and the older ones, who don't want to be butchered in their sleep by the younger ones, say, "Hey, you younglings, you get out there and prove yourself. Prove you're a man," or whatever, Um, go south and do what I did when I was your age. And the orc horde, they basically boot them out, and the orc horde starts moving. So because these orc hordes aren't all that subtle, and therefore have largely been a no-show in the published realms, let's not look at orc hordes. Instead, let's turn to quieter in the Heartlands.
Oh.
Climate effects. Now, the Heartlands, the easiest way to think of that is this band that goes from Waterdeep and all the way down through Cormyr and everything, where all the trade roads go, to cross from the Sea of Fallen Stars, the Inner Sea. And, folks, those of you who say the Inner Sea is Golarion, I had the Inner Sea first. The Sea of Fallen Stars, linking it with the Sword Coast. That's the Heartlands, where all the caravan trade, and it has to go around a Norok. There's one trade road that goes through, and that's where the Zhentarim made their pile, because they use magical means to cut the trade routes and therefore have a shorter. Because you see, if you don't care what you do to your people, and you don't care what you do to your draft animals, and you can cut time and ship goods faster, you can go through the desert. Everybody else went around the desert. Anyway, that's the Heartlands. So the problem with the Heartlands is in the middle of the Heartlands, which is why there are not that many major cities there, because I was thinking of climate too. They have periodic droughts. And they affect food prices, and they make buying and transporting food more important. For instance, when drought hits Kalimshan, starvation faces many folk. If the people who have wealth don't seek to make more coin by importing food from the border kingdoms, which is a nearby breadbasket. The Sword Coast ports from Baldur's Gate to Kalimport and Waterdeep to Neverwinter are all overpopulated when one looks dispassionately at how many mouths locally sourced food can feed. They all rely on food brought from elsewhere, primarily by ship from the Tashalar, that's around Tashluda to the south. Like the border kingdoms, it's another breadbasket. Or from the Heartlands, around the Sea of Fallen Stars, where Cormyr, the Vast, and Sembia are all notable breadbaskets. And through the Heartlands, caravans bring this to the Sword Coast. And that is why such cities as Burdusk, Crimor, Uriaver, Scornubel, and Westgate aren't just local, small farm market moot settlements. They're cities. Because of this constant flow of trade, and yes, tools and weapons and textiles and everything makes the trip, but the trip is being made in the first place because of food. Because if you can't eat and you can't drink, you're not alive to buy clothes.
Right. Okay.
The food comes first. Now, I've written in the past about the unreliability of gates, or portals in the later editions of the game, as bulk transport methods, using magic to translocate over distances, twists some goods to ruin, or at least unusability, and for far more often, simply makes them vanish. They wind up somewhere else, and you don't know where, so recovery is usually impossible. This means that good old sailing ships, caravans, and local peddlers with wagons or pack mules remain as necessary as they've always been if you want to live your life using items that you can't grow or reproduce within walking distance. And because they are in the game, like pirates are in the game, bandits and brigands are in the game, we know, and wagons and merchants and peddlers are all in the game, then they must be necessary. So gates can't be reliable. See, this is reverse engineering. You have to do it that way. So bandits and hungry marauding monsters makes such cargo carrying trips dangerous. But again, climate is a major factor, both in where folk live, so where the markets are and where the wilderness is, and what bandits and monsters can live there for long. Again, climate is everywhere, and climate is everything. One way of dealing with the expense and risks is to band together. I've written extensively about costers and priacos and merchant leagues and cabals and how they dominate overland trade. I've written about those things many times. The book I recently wrote with Rhys York, Souls for the Taking, begins with the three protagonists working as caravan guards on a run from the Sea of Fallen Stars to the caravan city, that's its nickname, the caravan city of Scornubel, and its events will largely take place on the trade routes. My last Chandril novel, Hand of Fire, is also largely set along the trade routes of the Sword Coast. So, instead of going over familiar ground, wahaha, here's something both new and very, very old that is involved with trade. The profession of cofferer. No, this isn't somebody who makes coffins and pops bodies into them. We might use the term repackager in our modern world. Small offices attached to large warehouses in on the trade roads places like Bradusk, Crimmer, Uriaber, and Scornubel, filled with fast-working, often unscrupulous individuals who process bulk cargo by sorting and sometimes washing bulk goods, then packing them in small containers from sacks to small coffers for individual resale. Now, just a real world aside, if you ever buy medjool dates in bulk, you will sometimes find nails in with them. Hand-forged nails, usually rusty. I happened to buy some years ago, and I went up to the front of the store and said to the proprietor, "What's this?" and held up some nails. And he says, "Oh, you don't realize these are gathered in the desert from the date trees." Okay, the local guys make coffins. Well, they just make coffins and instead of filling them with the body, they fill them with dates, and then they ship them out of the desert in the usual way. And these are nails that, when they were making the coffins, fell in and got lost. Seriously, they
Yeah, I
are.
know. Yeah.
Like, it's so cool. And he said you can have it for free, which made me even happier. No, I got a hand forged nail for free. Anyway, so a shop in the bustling heart of a busy city can just unload a few crates, open them, and put ready to sell things on their shelves. So if you're in Waterdeep, or if you're in downtown free city of Greyhawk, somebody has prepackaged stuff, so you just buy a little amount that you can fit into your shop, your already crowded shop, and sell through. A good repackager succeeds by knowing how much of something a typical buyer wants at a time and how to package it to look attractive so they'll buy, and to be portable so they can readily take it away to their home or a resale client wherever. Well working, skillful repackagers know how to pilfer small amounts from wares they're handling, akin to a thief clipping a coin. And historically, you could shave small slivers of gold, silver, and copper from the edges of a coin, because in the early days, coins were stamped and they had rough edges.
Yeah.
If you look at your coins now and they have knurled edges, the a pattern. Yeah, that's there to stop clipping, or it started as a way to stop clipping. Then there's another thing called sweating coins. You take a big canvas sack or other sturdy bag, you put scores of gold and silver coins into it, and then you shake it vigorously for a long time, and the friction wears away tiny fragments and dust from the coins without noticeably damaging them. So they just get smooth and worn down. And in both cases, the thief then melts down the dust from the bag or the shavings from the coin, and they get some precious metals for themselves that they didn't pay for. So here are 3 cofferers from the Forgotten Realms, an honest one who never pilfers, no matter the provocation or attraction of the goods at hand, and 2 rivals who are shady indeed. So here's your realms lore, folks. And yes, as usual, I will be giving it to Jay to, massage, and it will find its way in.
Put in a publication, hopefully.
Yeah. So, well, maybe the Greyhawk stuff. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, normally, I'll do the Pete and John's Teamster service on my end and have your writing for Forgotten Realms, and flush it out.
Excellent. Yeah, great. So, okay, our honest coffer is located in Waterdeep itself and is known as the Gentle Hand. It's run by Arcustras Bowgentle, a kindly, nervous old man who's a perfectionist and a bit of a fusspot, and who is well aware that his dozen-some workers who do the actual packaging after Arcustras, his wife Mayra, and his daughters Tamriel and Zenzoza have made the decisions about just which vials and coffers and ribbons or ties will be used, are almost all paid spies for this or that Waterdavian guild, watching like hawks for any signs of pilferage. Arcustras is glad of that because he doesn't want any pilferage to happen at all, ever. He makes offerings to Mask and Joaquin and Tyr in a careful ongoing sequence daily and works like a proverbial dog to make sure that no one waits for their goods to be coffered. He is the dream, the cofferer every client wants cofferers to be. Regrettably, he's a very rare beast. Which brings us to the less scrupulous cofferers. There are many of these across Toril, but let us peer at 2 of the most stylish, that is, firms that aren't obviously suspect from first acquaintance. That's what I mean by stylish. Marrowhar Handling and Austral Proffering. Marrowhar Handling is a halfling collective founded and run by Aldous Marrowhar. It's located in Northbank, Seacomber, in the sparsely populated northeastern verges of the city, where private guards are customary. The vigorous and attentive watch encountered in nearby Waterdeep is noticeably absent, and warehouse space is less ruinously expensive. Aldous is an affable, portly halfling of visibly advancing age, with bristling eyebrows, a gruff voice, and an alert mind capable of keeping track of 3 conversations at once, work in his hands, something he's watching nearby, and names, amounts, and dates he has to remember all at once. He misses seeing almost nothing nearby without seeming to watch attentively. He takes a keen interest in trends and events unfolding in the world, trying to correctly predict when prices, demand, will rise and fall accordingly. Marrowhar Handling specializes in preparing syrups, powders such as spices, and small amounts of items such as assortments of nails, or price tags, or skewers, for shop sale in Waterdeep by putting them into sealed vials of blown glass of attractive shape, or, for the items, smooth carved and finished wooden snap-shut coffers with hook and eye close catches. They are known for the beauty of their containers. Many Marrowhar are glass blowers, but the carved wooden coffers they source from many crafters in Succomber and Loudwater. Austral Proffering is located in an unmarked warehouse that's also the gatehouse to a quiet, overgrown, and seemingly disused compound of 5 more warehouses, all encircled by a double palisade. 2 concentric walls of stout tree trunks driven upright into the ground by gnome workers who never fail to put a steep-sided ankle-break ditch between these walls that inevitably fills up with rainwater, ideal for mosquito breeding. Maricus Austral is a tall, white-haired old gnome known for wearing ornate woman's gowns, purely because he likes to, usually of flame-hued silk, and running a bustling workplace with the quiet precision of the shrewdly worldly tyrant that he is. His 17, you see, I wanted to have a tyrant who's male and comes up to you in a dress, His 70, you'll remember him. His 17 daughters act as his roving overseers.
17?
17. The man knows how to produce them. It's a growth industry. His 17 daughters act as his roving overseers and ensure the only pilfering that befalls within the compound is sanctioned and determined by Austral and Ward themselves. Austral isn't greedy, as the legitimate work more than pays his running costs, so pilferage is gravy. Austral is known for collecting sweet liqueurs and wines and sharing glasses with business associates. He's not above doctoring them with sleep czar and other knockout poisons and concoctions when he wants to sideline an associate. He rarely does violence to anyone, preferring to simply put a rival or an inconvenient associate or anyone threatening him into a deep sleep that will last as long as he continues to dose them, and in the grip of which they can be transported wherever he wants and left to awaken in situations as awkward as he chooses them to be. So, there we have it. It may seem that we've come a long way from climate, but that's the root thing here.
No, that's
Interconnectedness of all things.
That's
Climate is the
fantastic.
root of everything.
Yeah.
Everyone's asking how many whys. I said, just use your imagination.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Consider that he's a gnome.
Yeah, what's the lifespan and active age?
I'm
and all
thinking
that,
that the gnome women are hardier than the gnome men. So the fact that one wife can produce 17 children is not a stretch. She'll probably go on producing children as long as he wants to go on making them, if you see what I mean. And she's of the same mind. But I dare say whenever she's tired of having children, that'll be the last child they have. She will rule the bed.
And they were all daughters. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, it means her genes are stronger. That's the thing.
That's awesome.
All these things follow from this one thing.
Yep.
That is fantastic. Yeah. I've always, like, with that, Tim's got Pete and John's Teamster service, and there's Abel Carter coaching. Tim's organization of transporting goods has always been on the up and up. They don't, they're not, they don't do that. They don't flip. They don't, they don't skim or whatever. And I've always wondered, I'm assuming that is rampant in any medieval game setting, I think, right? There's a lot of that going on, I would say, right? Because you had 2 out of 3. That where everyone needs to make their money somehow. So yeah,
somehow
I find that intriguing.
Well, no, think of it another way, Jay. Think how much a farmer gets for, say, radishes or leeks, something that basically doesn't get changed much. Well, okay, radishes do these days. They get bagged these days, but anything that is just brought from the field to your table, there's a huge difference in what the farmer gets paid and what you pay to take it out of the supermarket. The middlemen are taking their cuts all the way along. Now, near cities these days, a farm gate sale or a farmer's market, they're going to price things highly because they know they can. They can charge you a lot for eggs, and you can say, these are farm fresh. I pulled them out from under the chickens this morning, and you'll pay. But out far from cities, no, the eggs aren't that expensive because anybody can keep a few chickens.
Right. Okay.
See, the middlemen, you're still getting fleeced. You're just not getting fleeced by people who are breaking the law.
Right.
It's just that there are so many middlemen to take them from far away to your household. There's a lot of steps. And of course, there's also the thinking of, in our real world, the self-checkout and the self-bagging. And you go, hey, I'm doing your work for you. Why are the prices going up, not coming down? I'm doing the work of your staff, so you don't have to employ those staff. These potatoes and carrots should be dirt cheap because I'm doing the bagging. Anyway, you see how far we drift from climate, but it's all tied in.
It comes to a great point, and I'm going to do it because my guys, they whine a lot. Everyone knows that. And all the time, how come land in Altamira is so expensive? Where, right? Well, number one, they don't want riffraff in there, right? So they want the people with the money. And 2, taxes, defense, all that adds up. So like that's why to get a plot of land in the city and you're going to build a home there, you need to earn. They got to make sure that the right kind of people are coming into the city. It is a defensive position too, so it's the same thing. It's supply and demand. There's demand, high demand, and there's low supply. And it's slow growth. So it's because then you get all sorts of crazy things. I understand 100%. That was awesome, Ed.
No problem. Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
fantastic.
thank you. That was great.
I have to warn you, I got a lot more to talk about in Greyhawk. It's
I can't wait. I cannot wait. So we'll make sure
we have a question from Greyhawk Bard first. Let's go to that one.
Do you ever come across a spot on the Greyhawk map that you had to correct because it didn't make geographical sense, Anna?
Yes, yeah, there's a couple of the one that I think I've talked about the most here on the channel before is that rivers on fantasy maps have a tendency of flowing north. Exactly, they flow probably south.
Flows north in the
yeah,
map.
And my theory on that is that when people sit and draw, it's natural for the river to kind of flow down, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that I think that. And I can't say I've done a scientific study, but my hunch looking at fantasy maps is that most rivers flow south or something within more than 90 degrees south, so to speak.
Like the Columbia flows west and the St. Lawrence flows east, right?
Yeah.
What other ones in North America flow north?
The Yukon.
Exactly. You have to go
the Mackenzie.
Exactly. You have to go up in Canada or you have to go in Russia and stuff. So you have to be closer to the northern ocean coast than south, so to speak. But so that's one of the things that I've added rivers flowing north here and there, so to speak. Yeah, but then we have another one that I haven't talked that much about that I think is important too, is that I've added. Rift Canyon is often depicted as like a rift in the flat land, so to speak. What I did was that I raised it up significantly because I wanted it to because otherwise, why isn't it water filled when there's like so many rivers or whatever? So I wanted to give it a natural boost in being. So the reason that Rift Canyon or the Grand Canyon in the U.S. is that it's a high plateau and the river have slowly
cut down through it.
Exactly, cut through it. That's one way of doing it. The Rift Canyon doesn't seem to because there's no major river flowing through it, so it's deeper than that. So that's why I assume. So I simply lifted it up to add drama to it. So that is another thing. In a fantasy world, I think the natural phenomena can be even more impressive than they are on Earth, so to speak. So that was one of the things that I kind of added to the geographical picture a bit. And then we have another thing that is very common that I've talked a few times. We talked a few times, but quite a bit ago, is that there seems to be a thing in Greyhawk with splitting rivers that split into two.
Oh yeah, all over the place.
Yeah, and there's all over the place. So whoever did, and that I don't blame Darlene or Gary that much. These are later cartographers, especially the one that did, I forgot the name, that did the map in the Scarlet Brotherhood, because we have a Medio and stuff is full of them. So there are a bunch of rivers. I separated them, so to speak. But there are, and then we have the other classic one is near Greyhawk you have the Mist March. The Mist March have two outlets. And that is normally that's not the case, so to speak. Meaning lakes and wetlands, they can have two outlets occasionally when floods and when you have like after an ice age and there's like enormous amount of snow melt or whatever, then you have two outlets. And so there two but there's in Greyhawk, we have the most obvious example. I ignored the two outlets of the Rushmores and just painted them in, so to speak, because they are kind of, But we have the obvious example is Silintan and the Nessa River from Near Duv. Near Duv has two outlets. And that was something that bothered me a lot. So for my campaign, I've talked about it a few times, so I'm not going to go that deep. But what I did was that in my campaign, I simply said, well, the last ice age is a couple of thousand years ago in my campaign. And back then, there was so much ice, and Nirdiv rose significantly at the end of the ice age. And that's when the Silintan, the valley of Silintan was formed, because Nessa River flew over its banks and wasn't enough. So then it flew through the valley through the Cairn Hills and created. And then after when Nirduv had settled down into its current levels, that was just a valley through. But so and then the Salintan. So Salintan is fed through the Grey Run and a couple of other tributaries and forming the Salintan flowing out into the Woolly Bay. And here comes the engineers and the high ups and powerful ones from Grey Kingdom. And they found this place. And when they surveyed, they realized that, ooh, we have a valley to Nirdiv, 30, 40 miles north of here. And that is only there's not that many, it's only a few feet of height. We can dig a canal through there, and when we build the city of Greyhawk, we take that small little Greyhawk place that is just a little trade hub or a small little one, and we can actually build a port city on the Nirduv that has a short access to the ocean. Instead of having 1,800 miles of Nessa River and that marsh to pass, you can just go 150 miles downriver, and that way you can have a port city both on the ocean and the Nirduv, and you build it. So they dug out, so that I have it in my campaign, that the northern part, Salintan north of city of Greyhawk, is a canal, and you have there's like two bridges that basically form, and this Nirduv is only a few inches above sea level, so it's more like blocking the flow of water rather than having you don't have to have a lock system. But you basically have one set of river boats going south of Greyhawk and another set of more seagoing vessels on Nirduv.
That's
and
what they
that
did in
makes
Chicago, right, Anna? That river runs
exactly,
reversed.
yeah,
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of the same thing. So and that was something that the Great Kingdom engineers and so on, they had the resources and the thinking to create that. So that's my take on why the city of Greyhawk was founded there, and so on and so forth. So that's something that I have retconned into my campaign. And then you have the splitting rivers. There is actually a splitting river in the world between the Orinoco and the Amazon. You have the Cassiquare Canal, that is a natural canal. That is so I kept one major one, and that I think was really important to keep for keep consistency. In the Rushmores in the Sheldamar Valley, you have the Yavan River that splits into the Sheldamar and the Yavan, because the Sheldamar comes out of nowhere. You have a major river that comes out of nowhere. So we kept it that the Rushmores actually that goes into two, so to speak. So it splits into two. So the Sheldamar and the Yavan have the same. So the Sheldamar is kind of a split off of the Yavan River. But occasionally that happens in nature too. It usually only persists short term in geological terms, so from a few hundred to a few thousand years. But over time, it will be one or the other, just like the outlets. Yeah. So, but might be in Greyhawk, we might be in the few centuries where that happens, so to speak. In 500 years, it might be gone. But you can also engineer it. So if you're there and build dams and you make sure that water flows both ways, then you can engineer it, so to speak, as well. So yeah. So these are the obvious things that I have changed, so to speak, and at least looked into and kind of tweaked a bit. So yeah.
And if you're adventuring in the realms, the Forgotten Realms, there's actually a trilogy of novels called the Watercourse Trilogy by Phil Athens, where somebody tried to dig a canal from the Vilhon Reach to reach the seas to the southwest, below the Sword Coast. And there's a trilogy of novels where somebody is actually trying to work through. And of course, afterwards, everybody said, "So, where's the canal?" And I said, "It's silted up." Because it was like, yeah, do I want to completely?
Yeah.
Exactly. You need to maintain canals. Meaning that's the thing. Same rivers, they move that downstream, but canals don't have that natural flow, and that means that all the muck that comes into it just falls to the bottom. Especially when you build locks, because locks they cannot lock the water in, and then so you need to simply you need to demudify them or whatever, drain them or dredge them or whatever you call it, frequently. Otherwise, they get shallower and shallower over time.
And
so,
it's amazing when they drain stuff in Paris and so on.
Oh,
how many
yeah.
cars,
Exactly.
shopping carts,
you
bodies,
find so much stuff in there.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're dredging the Delaware River near where I live constantly.
Yeah.
To
Mm-hmm.
get to have high traffic flow of large ships up there.
Yeah. And one of the things that, because most rivers
they
in
should
the real
stop.
world,
They should stop. If they stopped, it wouldn't just be Washington crossing the Delaware. Everybody could walk across it. Okay, I'll shut up now.
But one of the other thing that happens in the real world when you start regulating rivers, meaning you build dams to stop flooding and stuff, that's why you have the Mississippi Delta is now disappearing, because you catch a lot of that mud and all that sediment that will be flushed down in spring floods in Mississippi, ends up being dredged out of the Mississippi on the way. And that means that so natural rivers, they flow, and they also flood over huge areas, and that used to be a good thing, meaning the Nile Delta in the Egyptian heyday and stuff. Before that, then you built villages and stuff on little either on stilts, or you built them up on artificial or real little highlands, so to speak, maybe up 100 feet or 50 feet or whatever they expected the flood to be, because the flood could be 10, 20, 30 feet. And there are still rivers, especially in South America, they have major rivers that are still unregulated, that still does that. I mean, the Paranal is a perfect example of that type of wetland that were frequent in every part of the world. But most rivers are regulated in the real world today, so we don't see it. But when you start mapping a fantasy world, meaning some fantasy worlds, you can definitely see that they might have engineering on that scale where they can do it. And other fantasy worlds, if you have like medieval technology, that will be beyond the scope what they can do. And that was one thing I was going to add. Ed, have you put in engineering on that level in Forgotten Realms?
Sure. The Waterdeep Harbor and the sewers and the merfolk who live there, you have to engineer, or the whole harbor would silt up. And what would happen is the sewers would back up into every street and every house and every cellar and flood the people out of the city. So you have to keep working on it. So and because various people wanted to have action in the sewers, I had to make sure that there were people at work clearing out the sewers. And I didn't manage to make it into Waterdeep, but in Crown of Fire, there's scenes in Zental Keep where people are going down to their cellars, opening a little door, down a few steps, and they're in the sewers, and they have a little flat bottom boat tied up there so they can make their surreptitious delivery of some contraband without getting caught by soldiers in the streets. And there's a whole warren of sewers down there, and there are all these people in little boats who are poling past each other, carefully not looking at each other or speaking to each other, so they can swear to the soldiers later if they're questioned. Oh, I didn't see anybody.
I love that. All the canals and stuff, and Peaky Blinders. They're always always using those things.
That
was pretty cool.
And there's a couple of good candidates for canal cities in Greyhawk too. One, the obvious one, is Nessermouth, at the mouth of the Nesser, because it's a huge, and that I imagine it's one of the biggest rivers. It's definitely Amazon scope river. It's a river that might be 50 miles wide at the mouth, so to speak, split up into multiple. The river delta is probably between 50 and 100 miles wide, and there are multiple channels of the river that shifts over time. So I want to depict Nesser River built, or Nessermouth built on a few hard rocks, so to speak, that are still left there, and then added on stilts, and they built like stone foundations and stuff of the city. But I can also imagine they having satellite suburbs, so to speak, that are built on stilts in various areas, because this is also an area where there's rich hunting, fishing and stuff like that. So it's a city that has rich. But another problem is that they also want to have a port, and in a city where you, in area where you have spring floods and different season and enormous amount of mud being moved around, so they probably have to kind of demuck their port often, and they have to kind of deal things. So I'm thinking that they build like two walls out so they can shield a canal out to sea that they can lead the ships into, and that way they can keep us so they get the silt to move on the sides of that, so to speak. So that's one of these engineerings I'm thinking when I can envision the city. So they actually built that a couple of miles down, and that can also add a defense value because that means that they can then check the ships and stuff, because if they can leave the mud and all that yuck around those two things, that means that anyone who wants to bring ships into the city needs to come through this canal. So it's a way of making sure your enemies need to go there too.
Right.
And then you build a couple of guard towers and stuff, and you get plenty of warning and so on and so forth.
And the old harbor chain.
Yeah, exactly. You put that across
to stop the
yeah,
ships. Yeah.
exactly. So, and then you can, of course, levy taxes and fees or whatever you call it along there. So that's one of the engineering I can envision. Another city that I think have a very similar situation is Radegast City, because Artonsamai is another one of these huge rivers that flows in, and there is a town next to it that Gary wrote about in the Gord books, where Gord visited, that's called Muddick. And I think that is a very appropriate name, so to speak, for being. So that's something that you can have huge mud flats and stuff like that. Areas that 9, 10 months of the year you can just walk around on them, and then all of a sudden the river floods and it's 10, 15 feet of water. And also the Nirdiv might vary a bit. I can imagine when you have the spring flood up north, when or early on when so there's like an onslaught of water that starts coming in spring and lasts until early summer, and then it dies down, and then at fall, winter it's much lower, and then in spring it starts over again. So because the Nirdiv is fed by rivers from half the Flanese, from up in all the way up from Perrenland and wolf nomads and stuff all the way south. So when they have snow melts up there, that can be significant, and that cascades the whole way down and then hits the Nirdiv and then onwards, so to speak. So that is something that can be very seasonal in some areas, and also that I imagine that coastline around Radegast City is also flat floodplain, so to speak. So that's where you can have that Mont St. Clair castle being out in the surrounded by mud. Then it will not be tidal, but it might be seasonal. So only certain times you have to take the boat, other times you can walk out to it. So
and for those of you trying to picture a city on stilts, the Hobbit movie where there's the fight in Lake Town.
Oh yeah.
There's a perfect example of a cold one as opposed to a tropical one.
Are there any Venice-like? We had a question. Venice-like cities? I don't think there are any in Greyhawk that I'm aware of.
Venice, well, yeah.
Marsember
flooding constantly. What's that?
Marsember in eastern Cormier in the Realms. It's slightly colder than Venice, but you know the old song "Venice is sinking."
Yeah, right.
Marsember is sinking too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
so
there's a couple of candidates, so to speak, good candidates. Radegast City is one of them that could definitely be turned. Nessermouth, and then there's another one that is a little bit different, but can definitely be a candidate for that, and that's Pontilver. Pontilver is interesting because it's in a bay inside, so to speak, and there you can have mountains that are inaccessible. So they built the city on the water or on the seafront, so to speak.
Where's that again? I don't remember.
Pontilver is on the right side of the map, so it's way exactly. So it's the southeast, and so those are obvious candidates for something. Pontilver is not straight at the river, but neither is meaning you have Venice is like an island in a huge delta, so to speak, that is the Po delta that is flat, and Pontilver can definitely be on an island like that too. And then see if we can have any other good candidates for that type of
While
Okay,
you're
you look
looking,
at the map.
Gerardsul.
Good,
Gerardsul
good,
is
good.
it's a good one. Yeah.
yeah.
Javan estuary, just
Now,
like
for those
Bessemer.
of you
Yeah.
who've been to Venice, real world Venice, it has two features of great interest to the storyteller and world builder. And one of them is they do have streets that are very narrow,
Mm-hmm.
like alleyways to cut through, like where the
Yep.
buildings are like 4 to 6 feet apart, and
Yeah,
you edge
almost you
along.
can reach,
Yeah,
almost shake hands at the
yeah.
top. Yep.
And the other thing is ambulances. They have ambulance boats,
Yeah.
and then people with a stretcher will come pounding up your steps, burst through your house, runs
Mm-hmm.
through it, through into the next one, but because they have to get to somebody in a hurry,
Yep.
and they get
And
there.
it's
So if you don't have that in your fantasy setting, you're gonna die, mate.
yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You got to think about things like this. It affects everything.
Yep.
You're gonna die in your room. And Tanya Huff, in her fantasy novel *The Fire Stone*, actually has a sage character who's also like a criminal mastermind. He's a big fat guy. He can't get out of the room he lives in
Oh.
because the bookcases and stuff are now have made it too narrow as he's gotten fatter and fatter to get out. So of course, when he gets killed, there's just this very bad smell until he mummifies.
And then they cut him up.
Yeah, you'd have to cut him up to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Nice.
you think about all these things.
Yep.
Climate is everything.
Mm-hmm.
But now let's hear Ed's Greyhawk lore.
Yes. Yep.
Oy vey.
New Greyhawk
Okay,
lore.
here we go. So, Anna's climate writing at
Thanks,
that
Dale.
URL
Mhm.
tells us there's a rainforest on the northwestern slopes of the Atholl Mountains in Ekbir.
Yep.
In that part of the Udgru Forest. What can I build from that? Well, I can build an entire economic engine for a D&D campaign, for starters, without inventing anything magical, just sticking to know what we know of the real world. We know that rainforests yield up all sorts of valuable goods that become useful and valuable when you get them to market somewhere else. For instance, spices and herbs, such as pepper, cloves, mace and nutmeg, which, by the way, come from the same tree, and dozens of others.
Guys.
Woods, not just as timber or furniture, but they yield dyes for tanning leather, not just coloring cloth, or that have medicinal purposes. In the real world, one such is red sandalwood. Tree resins. Bible readers, what we call the three kings, brought not just gold, but frankincense and myrrh, valuable treasures, as they were used both medicinally and as incense in temple rituals, and not just to blot out stinks. Other resins have been used for centuries as waterproofing, ship caulking, to keep them from sinking, to make ropes last by slowing the rot due to being
Yeah,
wet.
tar is material you make out of wood.
Yeah,
Tree.
and
Yep.
and sealing barrels so they don't
Yep.
leak. So the barrels will take something liquid to where or syrup to where you want it to be. A particularly valuable trade good from the rainforest was camphor, also used for medicinal and religious purposes. It's a waxy substance derived from the wood of the camphor tree, and it has a strong smell of its own. For plot purposes, if you're smuggling something that has a smell and you want to hide it, pack it with camphor all around it, and any inspector will quite understand you're guarding your camphor, which is valuable, very diligently. The ancient Chinese phrase for camphor was dragon's brain perfume, thanks to this smell. And why was camphor so important? Well, it's still used in the real world today as an ingredient in ointments to work against aches, sprains, and joint pain. It's a counter-irritant, creating a cooling sensation that distracts our brains from pain. Think minty and menthol. Think Vicks Vapo Rub. Think icy hot. Think, okay. Inhaled or rubbed on the chest or throat, it temporarily suppresses coughing and lessens congestions. Vets still use it today to treat horses that are having difficulty breathing. It's also still used today in some creams to treat poison ivy, insect bites, or eczema. And for thousands of years, it's been used as an ingredient in embalming fluids and in perfumes and in general wound care because it fights microbes, bacteria. It was used as a protective fumigant during the Black Death. And it's long been put in closets, vaults, and chests, like mothballs, to deter moths and other pests like red fire ants and cockroaches. It's also put into toolboxes and drawers because the fumes that it gives off as it slowly melts away inhibit rust forming on metal tools. Thanks to its scent, it's also been added to many soaps, cosmetics, and household cleansers. Oh, and you chefs out there, rosemary leaves contain camphor. And you'll still find camphor today in trace amounts in foods and drinks, primarily desserts from India and various Asian countries, as a flavoring agent. Trace amounts, by the way, because camphor is highly toxic in too large amounts. Eating too much of it causes seizures and permanent brain damage. So if you want to use it against your enemies, there you go. I could do a deep dive on the other trade goods too, but see how long I've talked about camphor? Camphor alone imparts the usefulness and therefore the value of stuff you can't get anywhere else. So stuff that grows in a rainforest. Greyhawk creators, by the way, have already added another invented trade good for our shipping flows, the salty fruit of the Galda tree, plentiful in the rainforest we've spotlit already here, and a staple in northern Neckbeer and Tusmit, as well as the southern tiger nomads. Rainforests are where avocados grow, coconuts grow, grapefruit, bananas, guavas, pineapples, and oh yes, cocoa plants, chocolate. You get them all from the rainforest. So now we know what can be in all those crates and barrels merchants are trying to get to somewhere else. How are they getting them to a lot of somewhere else's? Well, one look at the right map can show us that the dense, monster-infested, and teeming with game Udgrew Forest, and this is all Greyhawk lore, I'm making none of this up, offers a natural trade route. A river valley from the rainforest down to the sea at the port of Fashtri. Right there. Adventurers can obviously find hire as guards escorting outbound goods, and goods being refined and packaged in Fashtri, and goods being taken elsewhere by sea, because pirates are a problem wherever coin is passing on the waves. But adventurers can also be hired to go harvest the seeds and nuts and leaves and roots and flowers that will be so valuable elsewhere, and to fight off monsters, not to mention jungle bandits, who may well be other fell adventurers hired by rival traders who will seek to take what the PC adventurers have harvested rather than do all of this hot, uncomfortable harvesting work themselves. So that's how player characters and their rivals can fit in. Let me add two headliners to these trade flows. And here's where the lore comes in, folks, that you can use. First, Zundred Hafnir, a jovial friend to all, who you'll probably be utterly unsurprised to learn is ruthless underneath. He's a former pirate who, in his increasingly fat middle age, has turned to smuggling and owning small parts of ships, cargoes, cargo insurance, warehouses, wagons, and more. He's Bacloonish, or Bacloony if you prefer, by heritage, based on his own pleasure barge, but often to be found in quite ordinary looking but very well defended houses in many ports, and he's very well connected. Not just with bribed local officials, but to local gangs of dockside thugs everywhere. Cross him, and you'll find yourself facing a surreptitious army, not one fat, food and wine loving man. So, if you need a shady scheme that doesn't directly involve the Scarlet Brotherhood or this or that lich or other real evil, Hafnir's no doubt involved somehow. And the second thing isn't one guy, however colorful, but a family. The wealthy merchant family of Valandar, to be precise. House Valandar are the owners of many ships. They prefer fast, maneuverable, armed caravels over slower but larger cargo capacity cogs and galleons, and by means of this philosophy have very quickly become very rich. They maintain houses in many port cities all over Earth, maintaining low public profiles and avoiding ostentatious luxury. The Valandar fleets are based in at least 7 ports, with shipyards in 2 of them producing new vessels, and tend to be named following this style: the Pride of X, and the Valor of X, and the Prosperity of X, with X being the given name of a Valandar family member. The current patriarch of the family is Austrin Valandar, who defers in many things to his aging mother Melra, widow of the famous Rolgrar Valandar, who built the family from a modest player into the dominant shipper it now is. Austrin is Roldegar's eldest son. He's unmarried, largely due to his mother's repeated and unsubtle efforts to marry him to someone suitable, that is, noble and wealthy, and he is the last son standing of 3. His middle brother Trelvas drowned at sea when the prosperity of Melra was lost in a fierce storm a decade ago, and his youngest brother Aladdin is a disowned black sheep who broke with the family, turned pirate with the ship he was commanding, the Pride of Rolgra, and is seen sporadically when he raids ships and ports in the Air de Sea and Solar Ocean.
Nice.
Melrar has never tried to have Aladdin assassinated, not out of love, but because his activities keep clients accepting high shipping rates. Captains charge a lot to move cargoes thanks to the dangers of not just storms and sea serpents, and here we see the hand of climate, once again, not just for the currents and fierce weather, but for where sea monsters dwell and prowl for food, but for pirates. At the same time, Melra began the covert family program, still very much active today, of hiring outlaws and other desperate bandits and brigands to harry overland caravans of all sorts. To keep reliance on safer and more dependable seaborne shipping high, because everyone knows that what you want to sell just won't make it to your markets by land, at least not in your hands and filling your purse by the time it's sold. These reavers are based in such places as the Yetcha Hills, the foothills around Ket, the verges of the Bramblewood Forest, and foothills in northern Bissell and within reach of Thornward. And Melra has slowly handed over negotiations with these raptors, the collective code term used in the family for such muscle, always directed through intermediaries, of course, to her 2 daughters. The so-called silent sisters of the family can be seen as the secret weapons of House Valandar. Austrin is wise enough to trust his 2 sisters, as much as Valandar trusts any other Valandar, because both of them are capable administrators and keepers of purse who are quietly but largely responsible, after taking over from Melra, who trained them, for the continued success of the family. Unlike their irascible mother, they are consummate diplomats and actresses who unerringly do the right thing in every delicate political situation. The eldest is Algrea Valandar, a beautiful woman whom the passing years have made increasingly plump and grim-looking, and her 2 years younger sister is Nimru, who acts more impish, wry, and cruelly capricious. Someone who's met them could believe that Algrea would be scandalized by something or disappointed in someone and loudly declare so, whereas they would see Nimru as expecting and anticipating scandalous or disappointing behavior. However, both of the Silent Sisters rarely speak or even appear in public, hence their nickname, and when in the presence of someone who isn't family, longtime servants, or an ally they work with in shady activities, they adopt shy, innocent, false fronts to cover their essentially calmly ruthless and capable characters. They are firm friends, these 2 sisters, which is a good thing for House Valandar, because if these 2 sisters ever became feuding foes, they would likely destroy the family, its wealth, and all of its endeavors in the strife unfolding between them. The key to their continued trust and hand-in-glove working relationship is that Algrea wants the family to succeed, not herself personally, and Nimru has no ambition at all. She wants to enjoy the ride that she sees life as being, triumphing over others and winning situations whenever possible along the way. But possible to her is always a calculation of costs and consequences, not just success over someone here and now in the short term. Below the family are a handful of envoys, middle managers, if you will, whom the family spies upon as a matter of course. They are trusted and capable, or they die quickly. These include the former adventurers and merchant entrepreneurs Delvro Macalar, Telvrin Unstravro, and Verico Daggerfall Daglerfa. She notorious for defending herself with enchanted daggers that fly and stab in accordance with her will. And here are just a handful of the current Valandar ship captains, their vessels, their home ports, and the routes they usually sail, with usual bulk cargoes. Barrett, or Bert, Musker is a garrulous Griswold veteran. He captains the Pride of Ostrin. Its home port is Fashtri, and its usual cargo is spices to ports on Relmore Bay and Woolly Bay. So you see, he does a big, long sea voyage.
A huge sea voyage.
Dral Mrongor, coldly ruthless, polite and handsome scourge of ladies, captains the Valor of Melra, home port Gradsel.
That's where I am right now on the map. That's funny, Ed.
Yeah, there you go.
Spices. That's where I was going to say where I'm going to home base this group.
Yep.
There you go, right there. That's funny. Yep.
Ta-da! And he carries spices from family warehouses in Relmore Bay and Woolly Bay, ports to Keeland and Ulek, the port of Gryrax.
Perfect.
Vorund Navarar, who's young, handsome, charming, persuasive, and forgets no detail. He captains the Foresight of Algrea. His home port is Shantadern in Niron. And he carries spices from family warehouses in Relmore Bay and Woolly Bay ports to other ports on Relmore Bay and Woolly Bay and to Hardby for transport to lands around the Near Div. Osbur Harhand, stone-faced, always calm, steel gray-eyed pragmatist who always has 4 backup plans and 3 escape routes worked out. He captains the Grace of Nimru. Its home port is Willip in Furiondi. Spices from family warehouses in the city of Greyhawk and divers to ports all around the Near Div. There you go. So there's a potted family you can put into Greyhawk.
I love all those names, Ed. They're fantastic. Wow.
And it's lore that doesn't affect any existing lore.
No, no, it just adds.
It just adds.
Yep, that's how you do it.
It just adds. And
listen and learn, everyone. That was so cool. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. I now have to send this to
yes. So
to Jay.
I just need to get we need to get our Greyhawk journal out there, Sam.
Yeah,
our Greyhawk journal going, man. So or visions. That's fantastic. It's one of the best, dude. This is like one of the best ones you've done. I mean, they're all awesome, but this one is so detailed and so. Hey, this is something I can throw in, especially if I'm doing ship-based adventuring, which I
or just be at a port city or trade city. Yeah,
I do a lot of ship-based adventuring out of southern Principality Ulick.
And here's the thing: if you watch Hollywood movies, there's always stuff in the wagons. What's in the wagons? Why are they? If in the movie, bad guys or engines or whatever is in the movie is going to shoot at them or kill them, and they're going through a desert landscape that could kill them anyway, why are they making this trip? Why risk your neck? There's got to be able to make a lot of money somehow. So therefore, you got to be carrying something that is really needed.
Yep.
So and then this tells you what they're carrying.
That is so fantastic.
Yep,
what's in the box? Great. Yeah, Larkline, what's in the box?
Yeah.
That's unbelievably fantastic. So,
hey, no problem.
Yeah.
I've got to find your email and send it to you.
Oh, just Discord. You can put it in my Discord.
Which one? The Lord Gasumba one or
just put it right in my Lord Gasumba. You and I have a direct connection.
Okay.
So just start writing there in PDF or however you want to put it.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So, wow. what a fantastic, you know. And we went all over the place. We bounced around, right, Anna? We with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things, which is really
Yeah.
cool, which is a lot of fun. One last question was, were there any mountain ranges that you, Anna, were like, this has got to change? I saw that one pop up.
On the mountain, no, not really. I
The
just
mountains are pretty good.
added, and also Greyhawk has quite a bit of mountains already. So
Yeah,
what I've added are really low hills, like
yeah. It needs more hills. Yeah,
yeah, tiny low hills. These kind of simply to break up some of these
yeah.
so low that
Thank
they're
you for
not really
following.
noted. So
Yeah. All
one
right, thank you.
example
Got it.
is the Anodan or Anodan Hills in the southern Niron, so to speak. So that's one that they're low. They're only like 1,000, maybe 2,000 feet peaks here and there, so to speak. So they are so low that you can kind of walk across them, and there you can find ways to build a road with the and that can even carry wagons and stuff. So they're just more like a little spice of the landscape, so to speak. Nothing major that causes earth shattering or block climate or anything like that. But it means that they're probably less fertile soil, a little bit, yeah. So instead you keep goats and sheep and stuff and take them up in the hills rather than having grains and stuff like that. So they add a little bit of flavor and change to the landscape. I've added them pretty frequently here. That even the Shieldlands got a little hills. I call them the Syrian hills in the southern Shieldlands. They are that type of
See,
hills that
I
are
wish,
like,
I
yeah.
wish Mike was on, because Mike would have initially seen this family, and he could have he could have thrown that right into his Sea Princess stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Yeah.
it's perfect for that. Yo, Dennis, what's up,
Yeah.
Malvin? You know, perfect for that. Yes. Hey, Father's Day's
Hey,
been
you
great.
gotta have hills. You
Mm-hmm.
gotta
Yeah.
have hills. The
Yeah.
Hills
And,
Assyrian
have
and
came
and
eyes.
down
that's
like a wolf on the
yeah,
fold.
and
He's got to
that's what
come down
happened.
from somewhere.
Yeah, and every time you make a more
Good to
detailed
see you,
map, there are a
Dennis.
bunch of features that needs to be named and
Yeah.
created and all that in order to fill the details, so to speak, when you move in.
Yeah. Wow. So, what final points do each of you want to make for this climate discussion? As I know we're already to 9 o'clock. That's how
Yeah.
fast this went. I knew this was gonna blitz by, man. Really
Mm-hmm.
blitz by. So, what do you think, Ed? I mean, this great lore for both. I love it, and
Yeah.
you know, I really appreciate you answering all the questions
Uh,
on it. And
I
yeah,
would just say, um, to those of you who are thinking about it, climate is climate and landscape resulting from climate are a rabbit hole that you can go
oh
down.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
yeah,
your story, your adventures that are unfolding at your
big
gaming
time.
table should come first. Okay. Um, don't use it as yet another thing as fledgling world builders do, where they come up with a kingdom and then they have to go back through the ruling dynasty of kings or ruling stewards or whatever back for 10,000 years, and it becomes a procrastinating um, design hole. It's what your players are going to enjoy at the table should be first,
So
Yeah.
but don't not think of climate.
watch this. I'm going to put something in here. Ed is describing at Samwise. I'm sorry, Sam. I couldn't help myself.
Uh-oh.
But that's it. I mean, Sam's deep lore. You know, they call it the new
Mm-hmm.
canon. Yeah. I mean, they done it. They did it for Kia Land. They've done it for you know, for a lot of stuff, which is cool. I'm just busting stones, man. Yeah. I think the stories are most important. The adventures, the
Yeah.
stories are most important. This is all gravy on top, right?
Yeah,
And this
this
is
is
all
gravy
stuff.
on top.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
So you can flow into your game. So I agree 100% there.
But
What
if
about?
you do the climate and it works and
Yeah.
it works right,
Yep.
it's so much richer.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
It
It
enriches
becomes
the stories.
yeah, it becomes the fabric that can tie stories together and make them fit,
This.
so to speak. Yep.
You, Patrick, we're gonna get more Ed. We'll talk about that at the end. We'll
Yep.
get a little more Ed in
Uh-oh.
a couple weeks playing. Yeah, Anna, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just yeah, like I said, I think it's one of these. It's part of the fabric. If the map is the landscape and the geography is the landscape, this could be another glue that kind of puts
Mhm.
together the stories and make them you can understand as a player and how one fit together with the other one. It makes it believable. And for one shots and stuff, don't bother. But for long-term campaigns, if you want to play and you have a persistent world that needs to make sense over time, climate is one of these things that can be like a red flag that just forms in the background. And you don't need to inform the players, just experience what happens right now. Climate is the trends over time and the things that connects the dots. But if you want to make believable world building, because then you use that as one of your inspirations to make the cool stories and where do they trade and why do they only go fighting wars certain times of the year and stuff like that. When is war season starts and when does it end? And that's something that can affect how your politics play out and stuff. When do the orc hordes come? They come in May because that's when it's dry enough and they can run and they can use their whatever. Yeah, meaning there's all sorts of cool stuff like that you can have. And where's hunting season? When do you go out and hunt the aurochs or whatever it is that you go out hunting? When do dragons come to hunt and stuff like that tied to climate? You can meaning there are endless possibilities you can play with.
Back in the War of 1812 that I was talking about, there was no conscription, okay, and there was no standing army for the United States. So guys would go to Congress and say, "Hey, we want to raise an army." Well, they couldn't raise the army and fight until the crops were in.
Yep.
Because nobody would leave the farm to go fight until the crops were in, because they knew that they and their families would starve, whether they won or they lost, because they hadn't brought the crops in.
Yeah, so that meant that campaign season started after harvest until snow and frost came.
Until snow and
A sidebar to that. When the British landed and burned the White House down and started burning, a hurricane hit that night.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know about this. A hurricane hit and kind of saved the town. Also really, really degraded that British army overnight.
Oh, yeah.
And then they took off after that.
Well, here's the thing. It was a tit for tat. I grew up in the city of Toronto, which in those days was muddy York. York was its name, and it was all mud. And our capital was basically an oversized log cabin, a log cabin complex. And the Americans burned it to the ground. So it was like, okay, as a propaganda thing, we're going to burn your White House, which is why it's white. They painted the walls white to cover the scorch marks. It was a tit for tat. You went in and did ours, we're going to do yours. Ours isn't on the Great Lakes. You're going to have to march through half our country. Okay, watch us. Literally, that's what they did. It wasn't ever intended to be a conquering and occupying. It was you burned ours, we're going to burn yours.
It's all about conscription back then too. It was all about the Americans got to bug up their ass about saying too many were being conscripted on the British. And then the British had actually stopped it before the war started, and then the war ended, and still the Battle of New Orleans happened because of after the war was over. So lots of really interesting.
Because communications wasn't on the news an instant in those days.
It was all cool stuff. I know. And I was telling Anna when she was here, I have a wall with just maps all over the place because where I live was another country in 1623, and that was
it was a little Sweden's little colony.
It was New
Sweden had two colonies in the one down in the West Indies and then part of New Jersey.
Christianity.
And then we gave it away to the Dutch because we lost the war.
And then the Dutch lost it to the English. Pretty neat stuff back here.
Yeah, we lost the war, so we exchanged it because
they let the Swedes stay. The Dutch were like, we're just going to take it over, and then the English came in, and that because the Dutch Philadelphia was even there.
Exactly, because the Dutch didn't conquer it. Sweden lost some other war and did an exchange with the Netherlands.
So a lot of Finns and Swedes here at that time.
Because Finland and Sweden was the same country back then.
Oh, I did not know that.
Because we hadn't lost it. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we didn't had lost it. We lost it to Russia in 17 whatever it was.
I didn't know
Which is why if you look at Sweden's thing, there's 3 crowns.
Yeah.
Tre Kronor. Yeah.
Yep. So you guys educated me on that.
Yep. Oh, you should, Jay. One of these days you have to go to the palace in Stockholm and see the armor that one of the kings died in with the bullet hole and the blood stains still in the armor.
That was in Halden in Norway, where King Charles the 12th, he died, and that's only a few miles from where my mother lives. I've been there many times, and it's only a few miles away. And that was Karlsten's fortress on the Norwegian side, a huge one that the Norwegians built to keep the Swedes out. So they fought back and forth for hundreds of years over there. And where I grew up, there were one of the farmhouses that one of my relatives have. There are bullet holes in there that are from 1625 when the Danes were there and shot at that building, and he still has it. When he renovated, they took away and kept it because the bullet holes are there from the last time the Danes were there trying to take it. And that house is built in 1580 or something like that. It's like
I
crazy.
love the early history of North America. I really do. It's just because I live right
Jay,
here, right where the Revolutionary War took place. Yeah.
In both Stockholm and Quebec City, on 2 different continents, you can walk down streets and find cannonballs embedded.
Yeah.
That they've never taken away.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's neat.
And that's in Stockholm. We have them from the Stockholm bloodbath when the Danish king came and took all the most of all the nobles in Sweden, almost all nobles except one. That was from the Vasa. He fled to Dalarna. That's why you have a big ski race every year.
Oh, wow,
to celebrate
cool.
to celebrate the king. He fled to Dalarna, and then he found enough of his people that supported him, and then he came back and killed the Danes and threw them out of the country, and that's the last time the Danes invaded Sweden. And it was big. And Denmark and Sweden has fought more wars than any other countries on earth against each
France
other.
and England?
Oh yes, way more.
Oh,
we fought so many wars over the years, and now we are best friends, which is another amazing thing. So
wow, but it's hilarious. I asked my dad once, because I was reading through all the stuff in his den about all these, because he had like books like The Official History of the Canadian Expeditionary Force, 1914 to 1918. So I read all this stuff, and Liddell Hart and Churchill's history, that, English-speaking peoples and all this stuff. And I'm reading about all these wars, and I kept saying, well, if they had a war there and settled things, why did they fight again? He said, because the losing side never likes how it turned out.
Exactly.
And I said, and he says, son, you see all the men in this neighborhood, they all have cars and they're rich. So you don't see them returning the empties. But you see their teenage sons who've gleaned bottles from the roadside wanting to get a few pennies. They go walking down and return the empties. Well, half the wars in Europe were started because they all live next to each other. There's no room between them. And somebody returns the empties and somebody else gets pissed off.
Yep.
And I thought that is the best way to explain half the stuff that we don't understand.
Yeah, and somewise you're right. But that was because the Swedish king didn't have any heirs. He had one son that was simply not capable, and he died. And then they had no heirs. And Napoleon was the new cool hotshot on the political. Yeah. So there was a guy that was he was a duke or earl in Sweden, and he was the ambassador to the France, and this is when the French Revolution was going on, and he was screwing around with the Queen. That was his big accomplishment, and he did all of that, and he was then tasked to find the coolest, most capable general, and later, so to speak. So he found one of the generals after the French Revolution, and he was so he. And he found Bernadotte was one of the not lesser known, but he thought he was very capable. And Bernadotte probably bribed the Swedes to get that position. And he kind of, do you want to become king of Sweden? And he had to find out where Sweden was. And he got up to Stockholm, thought it was cold, but he was like, okay, I'll be your new king. And that's how Sweden got a new royal house, so to speak. And we still do. So he's like, what is it, 6, 7 generation now? I think generations of Bernadotte.
The king came here in 76. 1976. He came to South Jersey and to Delaware and to parts of PA because
and
that
then
was
he'd
all
only been king for 3 years.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was in 3rd grade because every time there's a new king in Sweden, they do what's something called the Eriksgata, meaning the street of Erik. And Erik was one of the early kings in medieval Sweden. And when he started the tradition, when you became king, you travel to every town in the kingdom to simply make sure that the subjects were loyal and kiss the king's hand or whatever. And that is still a tradition. So the king traveled around the country when he becomes king. And I was in 3rd grade and I was standing there and the king came by and he was saying something and waved and everybody was, that was
cool.
So that was, and that was 3 years before that. So
Neat stuff. See, I know we go off on a cool tangent.
Yep.
Yeah. So when Tiffany was here last weekend, I showed her. I have a map from the Dutch cartographer De Kuiper from 1680, and it showed there's no Philadelphia. It's not exist yet. It says it says New Amsterdam, not New York. But on the little tip of where Jersey is, there's a little dot and it says Sveaborg. That's on the map, and that's Swedesboro, which is right down the road from me where I live. And that's where he visited because that's where the first log cabin, because it was Swedish. Swedes did log cabins.
And the original name in Swedish was Sveaborg. That means Swedish, the fortress of Sweden.
Yeah, fortress.
That's what it means originally.
It's really cool. I love the history around here. It's really cool. And then all Fort Mercer, where all the Hessians got their asses kicked, and all that stuff is right down the road from me too. It's a really neat area.
So and it was just the area when Sweden started losing all the wars, we overextended ourselves. It took 300 years to recover from all of that.
So it's Borg in Sweden, and to Germans, a castle is Berg.
Yes, exactly.
So if you see all the names that end in Berg, that's
pretty neat. Pretty neat stuff. There you go. Some real life history. Along with fantasy play and 2 great settings, Forgotten Realms of Greyhawk. So all right.
I'm going to post my link to my Patreon because I have one new post that is still for patrons yet, but wait a few days or sign up to my Patreon where I present my new generation of maps. I present a little bit of the technology behind and samples and stuff like that, and I'm working hard on expanding them, so to speak. So and there's a little link you can download them in full resolution and see, and it's 5 feet per pixel, and I'm working on a lot of it.
1,300 members now, Anna.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that means you've got enough members that you could print these in glorious Technicolor.
Hopefully in the future, yes. Yep. That could be So,
and everybody who's listening, if you say I'd love to have one of Anna's maps, but I have no place in my home to put it, unless you're a teenager with posters of rock goddesses or gods on your ceiling, you have ceilings all over your house.
There's walls.
Good point.
Plenty of walls. Plenty of walls. So everyone should check this out. And you should just,
click on it there, and then you can just scroll through it a little bit.
Great Patreons to do here. So,
and if you want to adventure in Greyhawk, what a great way to fall asleep every night looking up at your ceiling, daydream about adventures. As you let your eyeballs wander over the map.
Some really cool things, and plus all the heraldry.
There will be more heraldry, but right now I want to produce the start set of maps for this to get it out of the park, so to speak. But it started to come up. I'm working in Scragholm and the Veng estuary and delta, and there's a lot of fun to do because it's it's a huge river delta and those islands, so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to work on that part. So
Ed, you got anything? Oh, I got to show you something. Do you have anything to go over? Do you have anything you want to shout out?
Oh,
1 second.
I'm just putting the finishing touches on something I'm writing for Elderbrain.
Oh,
Spawn of the Mindrender. Elderbrain is essentially 2 great gamers in Hungary, and they're putting out these really cool, lavishly illustrated fantasy adventures, and this one is sort of like Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness, only medieval fantasy with Norse in it, or fantasy equivalent of Norse, and it's amazing. I really enjoyed this and had great fun I'm just writing a one-shot adventure, and they have many one-shot adventures. But if you want to take a look at it, go to Elderbrain website or type in Spawn of the Mind Render, and you'll see that's the thing I'm finishing up now. And then I have to turn right around and do something for GUI Cube that follows on A Trouble with Rats. There is going to be a sequel.
Nice.
A Malady of Mimics.
You convinced me, by the way, to do something, and I'm glad I did before they're out of these. You could kill someone with this.
Yes.
I got the box set. It is awesome.
Isn't it
Oh
gorgeous?
my gosh. Just to have it. And it was on sale too when I got it.
Anna, Viking Rule Dublin.
Oh man, this thing is awesome.
Yeah.
Which really happened, of course.
Yeah,
in real life.
Cool.
Yep.
I mean, if there are any left, I highly recommend getting it. It is really fantastic.
Andrew, who is the publisher, Pendelhaven, who did and created Fate of the Norns. He got caught in Trump's tariffs and all the delays and everything. So it was a very long time fulfilling that last part of the Ultimate Viking Anthology Kickstarter that he did years ago, that had novels by me and Michelle and so on in it. But that was the last one, the city. And he said, I'm going to over-deliver. I'm going to cram this box full. This is not going to be a half-empty box with a few dice rattling around it.
No, it's not. It's full.
Yes, you can kill small children and dogs.
Yeah, it is heavy. I was shocked, but it was like, wow, it was worth it.
Yeah, when it comes, you can use this. Like, we're designing it. It could last for 15, 20 years. You could run a campaign. It's that deep, and I'm going on detailing it as we
pieces for a city of your own.
Yeah,
just a city block you could take.
Yeah. Inside it, folks, are these two books. Inside that box. One of them is the overview of the city. That's this one, and one of them is this one.
Slide over that way.
There you go, camera. And this is where the palace is. This is the seaward side, the downstream part of Athcliath, which became Dublin much later. At the moment, the Dublin is the Black Pool, the swamp, where the Poddle hits this ridge and has to go around it to join the Liffey. So the Vikings chose it because all these rivers are tidal. And if you pull your long ships up on the beach and then you eat and drink and get married, and in the morning, your long ships have gone out to sea with the tide and you're marooned in an enemy country with no ships. So you'd like a place where they won't go away. So the Black Pool, the swamp, you pull them out of the tidal. And that's why Dublin.
Right, exists, yeah.
Yeah.
And Dublin has that I talked about for Nessemouth. In today's Dublin, they have built those two walls to keep the river from mucking up, so to speak.
Yes.
So that's one of the good examples of that idea that I will try and see if I can develop for Nessemouth when I get there.
And if you are a member of the Patreon for Athcliath and so on, I just delivered the Water Banshee, who is in one of the adventures, and Andrew said, I need a stuff on where the Water Banshees are all around Athcliath. So I detailed where they all are. Yeah, we're having fun with this. I love doing this stuff.
That's fantastic. So this week we'll have a Legends and Lore. Mike gave us a lot of options for topics in Discord. We'll have that Wednesday. I have basically a 3-week Armed and Dangerous all-female casted thing. Prelude on Thursday, and then for this Thursday, and then the 2nd and the 9th will be even more. I know Tiffany will be able to play then too. So we'll have at least 3 cast members this Thursday, at least 4 the next 2 weeks after that. All right, leading up, and then we'll have a Barbarian game on Saturday morning at 10. Because we have a doubleheader on Saturday. The ever mysterious Tim will be DMing his City State Invincible Overlord at 2:30. So I'll be DMing at 10. Then I'll come upstairs and Tim will be DMing at 2:30. So I'll be brain dead by that time. So my character may, we'll see about what's going on. Then we'll have a Gabbin next week. But then here's some highlights so we get to that. And I already showed these earlier. But in two weeks, we'll have Emperor's Choice, our newest sponsor, an Arduin, Bloody Arduin discussion. History of all the stuff going on with them. They have metal minis, which are very inexpensive. I'll also show you the thing I got in I won at the auction at CNY.com. It's on my table downstairs. It's fantastic. Great paint jobs, great, just wonderful stuff. And that's George and David, who have that company. They're fantastic. We've been giving away their card decks already, and then we're gonna have great giveaways from them already. But we're gonna have a really special one, at maybe 2 of them, during the 24-hour stream coming up. And then that on July 11th, I requested it for Twitch front page. Don't give this to me. I'll just behave myself. I better keep my mouth shut. But I got to add to this because that's confirmed. So we got Tiffany, we got Myriad, we got Amanda, the ever mysterious Tim, Grim Sparkle, Curtis, and Brett. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Yeah. Fortress Ellendar, which is a third-party company that is on my wall of fame. It's a Jeffrey Dillo, high fantasy games. They only made like 4 or 5 publications, and but it's okay. It's awesome. It's a fantastic adventure, and I'm going to run that starting at 10 a.m. all the way through to the finish. Ed will probably be in around 6. So maybe 8 hours. Last year for Belgian speaking, they kind of saved their butts when they came in with all that, because everyone's brain dead. No one could do the puzzles, but Ed figured them all out. So
don't do that to me again. Don't worry
puzzles. The ending on this is unbelievable. It's just such a great adventure. Cannot wait to run it. And that's what we'll have going on over the next 3 weeks. We've got so much content coming up. So many things. I've already run and then you're at EggCon the weekend after that.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not get invited this year.
EggCon and then Gen Con, and then I get to go home and do laundry and then go to Grand Con.
Wow, so you are packed.
This year. I then have to pull in the horns a bit. There's too much conventions. I'm not getting my writing done.
Right. No, I understand that. I had 2 conventions the last 3 weeks. Last 3 weekends. I had
know you feel.
And then CNY. So,
but Gary Con and Gamehole Con, I will always make it there. Right. If they'll let me across the border, I will be there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We're already doing some prep work for for Gary Con already. So I know a lot of stuff is going on. Oh yeah. Good stuff. We'll have so many people from the community going next year. Even more than this year.
Will there be product?
Yeah. Well, there'll be some announcements. Did you see? I know that Andrew and Luke were up in Toronto.
Montreal.
I'm sorry, Montreal. This week, and they say there's some great things. So we may have a meeting tomorrow night
with a sandal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a good feeling on it, and
I love Bushra's T-shirt.
Yeah.
I don't question Luke's choices because I'm one of them.
That is so fantastic. All right, let's go to Mission Point Drawing. We're giving away 2 $25 gift certificates of Troller Games. And Michael, I got Chuck working on yours, so you're fine. It'll get to you. The resubmit on that. So, and then we're going to arrange the Sparkles Mandy. Call it an evening. So here we go. Let me set this up. All right. All start up here. Wow. Yeah, there's not enough hours in the day. There's not enough days in the week, Ed. I'm
I know. That's why I get by on 3 hours sleep.
Unbelievable. It's great.
Yeah. I'm getting
there, Rachel and Sam. Oh my gosh, it's Rick.
Wow.
Marquee Gaming and Samwise. There you go, Sam. I will get that out to you tonight because I have the codes. Let's sit tight. We're going to arrange the Sparkles Mandy. Please say hello over there. Part of the stream team. We're adding members of the stream team. Lexi Draws just got added. So we're going to continually add more and more people into the stream team and keep it rolling here. Hey, thanks. What a wonderful show. Anna, thank you.
This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed.
We'll do another one in a couple of months when things quiet down.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
This is awesome fun. Yep.
Yeah, and we got a new player on Saturday too. Erin, my laundry, which is Myriad's friend, is going to be playing for the first time ever on Saturday morning as well. That'll be fun too. So, the Barbarian one here. Let me set the raid up into Sparkles Mandy here. Thank you for all the follows as well and all the subs and everything we got. Here we go.
Nice.
Talking too much.
No, you're not. This is great. Jake.
Yeah,
this was
so
fun.
much fun. Yep.
I love the theoretical discussion here a little bit. I think we got to continue to do a couple more like this.
We need to sprinkle these in.
Yep, with all the
every third or fourth or whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See you Wednesday night. Thanks. Boom. Right in. Nice.
Yeah, popped over 74. Good numbers.
Yeah,
yep.
A lot of people are probably in there already.
Nice.